to congratulate those two opposition senators in the other place for comparative analyses and penetrating insights into the bill that is presently before us. I listened, and as the Honourable Member for St. James Central observed, he accused me of taking notes furiously, and he's not incorrect. I like to take notes and I like to learn, and he certainly taught this House a lot today. He spoke at length, and if the length of his speech has been a fresh application to retake the job that they took from him, he certainly has my support, even if he does not have my support on his content. I sat with some admiration that a man could be so eloquent and yet be so deprived of that which he thought was his. And I commiserate with him. And I know this is being mooted as a season of disruption in the ranks. Rumors abound, Your Honor, that this is a season, there's one coughing. It has started. The evidence of the disruption has started. And I am told that in a matter of days, sometime coinciding with the annual conference of the Barbados Labour Party, some men and women will be seated in different apartments of their mother's house. And so if the Honourable Member for St. James Central wishes me to join in his appeal for political salvation, he will form a queue, he will be a part of a queue, which is, at these times of threatened disruption, led by the Honourable Member for St. George South. Even in his absence, I speak for him, that it is said that he is one who knocks on the door of the Minister of Health, always seeking to save his tenure. But that is, by the way, Your Honor, and you've been very indulgent. But I thought that I should locate this debate within some context and to explain why the Honourable Member for St. James Central displayed his considerable oratorical talents, if only in search of that job that he lost, his political salvation. And he brings legislation here today, Your Honor. As does all legislation, it expresses government's policy. And the country must be concerned not so much at the letter of the legislation, since a lot of it repeats legislation that came some 11 years ago. But the country must be more concerned at government's policy in relation to an industry that is extremely dynamic. I think the member for St. James Central will admit that the energy sector in Barbados in 2024 is not the same, not quite the same, as the energy sector in 2013. So that if he boasts of new developments in a dynamic sector, his boast is not without some justification, but the public will want to be assured that these fresh developments from the new government accord with the interests of the people. And when I say the interests of the people, I say that as contradistinct from the interests of Barbados Light and Power. I don't think we should feel squeamish about mentioning the name Barbados Light and Power in here. I will not disguise their name under the nomenclature, the utility, the public utility. That's how the legislation describes it, and legislation is always meant to be neutral on these matters of nomenclature. But let the public understand that this legislation that comes to the House today touches and concerns the interests of Barbados Light and Power, and it touches and concerns the interests of the consumers, the citizens of this country, in their powerlessness. And the citizens of this country must always expect that a government will defend their positions of powerlessness in relation to the great power that resides in large corporations, and the Barbados Light and Power is not a small corporation. So that when legislation comes here, the public expects as much protection from this government as they naturally expect this government to protect the interests of Barbados Light and Power. It is probably trite to say that legislation is the law, and that is, I always say, that is why we're here. We come here, well, the government comes here to make law, and it is easy to, they write it in English, so I don't know why people make this song and dance about what is written in English. We all are literate people, we read it and we understand it. But what is unwritten in legislation is this thing we call justice. The law is written, and as I've said, in this jurisdiction it is written in English. And therefore, all literate Barbadians will understand everything that is said in it. You don't have to be a parliamentarian, nor a lawyer, nor an engineer in this case, nor even a philosopher, such as you are, Your Honor, to understand it. But the public wants to pay some attention to what is unwritten, and what is unwritten here today is this thing we call justice. That thing that the ancient Roman emperor described as the unshakable desire of the law to render to every man his due. And at the end of the presentation, the speech, the eloquence of the Honourable Member for St. James Central, will the public ask him? Will the consumer, the citizen, the powerless citizen ask him if they have been rendered their due by this legislation? Whether justice has been served in their direction? I think you know my answer, Your Honor. And if you were seated not there and in your usual place, you may well quietly agree with me that justice within the text, hidden between the lines of this legislation, has not come to the citizen of this country. But it's easy for me to say that. It is another thing for me to prove it. And I say that justice is that unwritten virtue. And I say that we will not find it within or between the lines of this legislation today. The implication is that legislation must be fair. If we're talking about legislation being just, it must be fair and in obedience to the rule of law. I've had occasion to say in here before, what is the rule of law? Some people believe that in that phrase, the rule is a verb. Some believe it is a noun. I'm going to say it again. That the rule of law seeks to ensure that no one, human or corporate, is given such advantage that he can function above the law. And a question which will present itself to this government is whether this legislation places the public utility. I will now emulate the Honourable Member for St. James Central, and I will allow the corporation to mask itself behind the nomenclature of the legislation. The question is whether this public utility has been allowed or is being allowed to function in a manner that some citizens will believe that it is above the law. Certainly when one looks at bills, and I'm going to come down to the cold hard facts, the cold hard reality that visits the lives of people once every month. And to say to the Honourable Minister, in spite of his accustomed eloquence, that energy is at the heart of life in Barbados, material life. That every company, every industry, every household, every corporation, every domestic entity called a household has to pay an electric bill. And I say that, and I say this without any hint of apology to anybody, because what I'm saying reflects the reality of people in this country. That electricity bills are at the heart of hardship in this country. Electricity bills drive inflation. And this is not an attack on the public utility. This is an exposition of the reality that visits the lives of people in this country. And when a government comes here to pass law, and that law pertains to electricity bills, the people can read the law, as my friend read it this morning, but can they feel justice? Can they feel that the law has served their interests? Can corporations in this country feel that this law has served their interests? Every commodity that you purchase in this country, Your Honor, is subject to an energy bill. For some, it is affordable. There are people in this country who postpone the obligation to pay a light and power bill. And 30 of us in here understand this more than most Barbadians. That there are lines to our constituency offices. And I'm not criticizing poverty in this country. I'm explaining the plight of the poor in this country. That more than any other bill, it is the light and power bill that comes to us in search of assistance. Every one of us, all 30 of us, those present and those absent, this is our experience. Sometimes it is the Water Authority bill. Sometimes it is in September or August, it is a request for a school book, a pants, a shirt. But from month to month, there is no content of a request which is as constant and repeated as the request to help with an electricity bill. That tells us something. That tells us something. So that whatever it tells us when the government comes here, the government must not speak to us in lofty language of legislation. And again, I congratulate my friend. I almost said my learned friend. He's that too. But in this context, he is the Honourable Member for St. James Central. And curiously, he is the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And I say curiously because I did not expect to meet him in his eloquence today. I expected to meet him in his eloquence, but I didn't expect him to be the one piloting this. But perhaps because he is the most eloquent among them, he is asked to do what others are afraid to do. And for that, he must also be congratulated. Some days ago, I described him as the bad news man. Well, he pays for his eloquence. Today, he's a bad news man. Today, he comes to the public and he is unable to alleviate their distress, their hardship, their inability to pay the bills of the public utility. I will now allow them anonymity as I proceed on this little job that I have. Let us bring it down to this matter. In an economy, there are competing interests. Within the context of this bill, there are competing interests. There's the interest of the utility, Barbados Light and Power, and my learned friend, the Honourable Member, I beg his pardon, the Honourable Member for St. James Central, described them as a monopoly. Now, that is a description that admits and endows them with much power. A monopoly, by its nature, is a creature of great power. You are the only one within the economy selling this service. And when you're the only one selling a service, might not that fact of monopolistic presence put the consumer, the citizen, at risk that you may overprice? And I'm not accusing them of overpricing, but a government that is vigilant, a government that intends to protect the interests of the citizen, has an obligation to ensure that cost of electricity, not only to corporations, but to domestic households, don't they have an obligation to ensure that those bills are affordable, that they can pay them? And so we have the interest of Barbados Light and Power, the monopoly. Now, it is not usual that legislation comes with an acknowledgement of the existence of a corporate entity. That in itself betrays great power. That legislation is passed to ensure your place in the marketplace. And not only to ensure your place in the marketplace, but to ensure your status, your monopolistic status. That is an acknowledgement by this Parliament of the great power that resides in the hands, the literal hands of Barbados Light and Power. You don't have to be an economist to know that a monopoly, generally speaking, or ordinarily, has great power in relation to pricing its product. In this case, the product is the generation of electricity. And that is why there's something called the Fair Trading Commission. And I will come to that in somewhat greater detail later. But the government has intervened as it is entitled to, and as the last government intervened as well, because the Honourable Minister would have reminded us that this entity functioned in this place for 100 years. And that the legislation has had to develop. And it is not usual for legislation to almost exclusively concern the interests of one company. So powerful and important are they. But this government, like the last government, acknowledges its responsibility, its duty to the public, to balance the interests of Barbados Light and Power against the interests of the poor lady who cannot get her electricity bill paid, or even the man who can get his electricity bill paid. But those are the competing interests here. The interest of the public utility in terms of its motive. We know what is the motive. The motive is to make profit. When you set up a company, unless it is a charity, you are trying to make as much money as possible. And that is not a moral condemnation. That is an economic and commercial fact of life. If you're selling mangoes out there, and you could get $5 for one, you're not going to ask for 3 unless you feel some moral compunction so to do. That is called the profit motive. You try to make as much as you can. And if Light and Power is trying to make as much as it can, it is no different from any other company which will try to make as much as it can to satisfy its shareholders. I say to satisfy its shareholders. I didn't say to satisfy greed. I say to satisfy its shareholders. And that is called the profit motive. And so here you have a government, like all governments, dealing with the competing interests of the monopoly, the company, the utility, against the interests of the citizen. What is the citizen's interest? The interest of the citizen is that he or she must be able to afford the bill, that his costs must be as low as possible. This debate needs to come into the drawing rooms, the dining rooms, the kitchens of the people of this country. And the lofty expressions, the eloquence must not be allowed to lose the purpose and the meaning and the impact of this debate on the lives of people. Can this government withstand the criticism today that this legislation finds itself more favorably placed on the side of Light and Power? Or do we say to the public, is this government able to say to this public that this legislation gives comfort? In other words, is the eloquent member for St. James Central able to tell the people of this country today that after this debate, after the passage of this bill by 28-1, because I will oppose it. I will oppose it. And I'm unabashed about that. And I will oppose it, Your Honor, constructively. That is my constitutional duty and mandate. I will oppose it. Because this legislation, this government has not given any assurance to the people of this country, the poor people, the middle class people, and the rich people, that their electricity costs will be lowered. In the 2.5 hours that my friend spoke, the honorable member spoke, did this country hear him say to the people of this country, rich, middle, and poor, that their cost of electricity will be lowered? Not once. Not once. And this is not a personal or professional criticism. He resides within a government that has found itself unable to represent and defend the interests of the people against large corporations. John 3:16, that's a fact. That's a fact, Your Honor. Every time you smile, I interpret it as agreement with me. So please don't let them see you smiling.
I have to be independent.
Yes, you're independent.
Here,
but
so sorry.
I love it when you smile.
And I love it when you speak.
Oh, you love it when I speak?
So please continue.
Well, that is how the truth appeals to the chair.
Please continue, sir.
The chair returns love.
Yes, please.
Yes. But not once has this most eloquent gentleman given the people of Barbados the assurance that bills will be lower. Not once. If he wishes to, he can interrupt me on a point of order for misleading this chamber. But that is what the people of Barbados wanted to hear. I can pick up this bill and read about the advisory committee and all kinds of things, which are not abstract, all written in English. And we all understand it. But what the people of Barbados wanted to understand, and what my quiet colleagues on that side wanted to what they wanted to hear, is that their constituents will be under less pressure. The greatest of eloquence will not satisfy them. I don't know what they will say when they get it. I hope they will represent their constituents. But they have a political obligation to support the honourable member who was sent. He was sent. He too. If you get him up at 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, wake him up suddenly, he starts to tell the truth. Suddenly. And he will tell you, in that moment of subconsciousness, that he does not agree with most of what he said in here today. He spoke about the voice of Jacob and the hand of Esau. Well, we heard Jacob today. But there's a hand behind that compassionate gentleman who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I have never heard a Minister of Foreign Affairs lead this kind of a debate in a house. Why they sent him? They don't like him? They have several ministers that would have been well suited to do this. But the point is eloquence. Eloquence has been appointed to mislead the people of this country. May I say that, ma'am? Sweet words. And if you think I am misleading you, let me quote some of these sweet words. And he accused me of taking notes, and he's right. He said it's a theater of opportunity. Now, there are not many who can speak like him. Not many.
Don't try either.
This is a man given to the classics. He quoted the classics in here more than once this morning. He quoted the great writers. If he hadn't stopped going to church, he would even have quoted the Bible. But he called it a theater of opportunity. And how glad must have been the hearts of people when they heard that there is somewhere in Barbados now a theater of opportunity. And he clarified it further and he said, a theater of investment opportunity. And we will come to that. But that was the dramatic language that visited disguised hardship in this country. This bill contains disguised hardship. This bill has done two things. Largely speaking, I'm glad you're taking notes, ma'am, because you have to speak to your constituents as well and explain to them what happened in here this morning. This bill has furthered the interests of the Light and Power Company. I spoke of the competing interests of costs, and I've accused this government of not having said anything to protect electricity cost to the consumer. And if there's a third thing that this bill has done, this bill has given increased power to the government in its role of supervision of the energy sector. I will explain that when I come to it. And if there is a fourth effect of this bill, it is that this bill has marginalized the Fair Trading Commission. As we all know, the Fair Trading Commission is a quasi-judicial body which seeks to regulate pricing, or in essence, to control corporations which are utility providers, electricity, telephones, water. And the fair trading is there for that purpose. I repeat, so that the public is in no doubt as to what I'm saying. I say this in all seriousness. That at the end of unrivaled eloquence, the public can now be satisfied that this bill largely represents the interests of light and power, diminishes the interests of the consumer, whether corporate or human, marginalizes the Fair Trading Commission, and further empowers the government through the offices of a single minister in terms, yes, they've marginalized the Fair Trading Commission, and they have further empowered a minister in his or her supervision of utility companies in this country. I don't say that lightly, because last year I said the same thing when they came here to amend the Utilities Regulations or Utilities Regulation Act. They came here to amend it. And that amendment expressed itself, if not exclusively, predominantly on the issue of further empowering a minister. In other words, the citizen through interveners, their right of access to the Fair Trading Commission was interrupted by something called ministerial discretion. In other words, a minister was given the discretion. The minister was given a discretion as to whether he or she felt that an application to the Fair Trading Commission was justified. So that what this act may have done, this bill may have done, this bill constitutes a continuation of a trend in which the government is placing itself between the corporation and the citizen, marginalizing the Fair Trading Commission and assuming powers not on behalf of the people of this country, but assuming powers on behalf of Barbados Light and Power. I can't be shy about saying it. We know what this bill is about. And as I've said before, and I'll say it again so that the people are reminded, it is a rare occasion on which legislation comes to a parliament and concerns itself solely with the prospects of a single company. I beg your pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the Honourable Member for St. Lucie was interrupting me as usual.
No.
He is.
I would have acknowledged.
You control him, man.
So you can continue.
You control him.
Continue, sir.
Because he is down there drinking brown water.
And you're having your beverage, but that's fine. Continue, sir.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Protect me from him.
I shall.
Yes. Wearing a green shirt. You can't wear a white shirt. All the white shirts brown. And not a word of complaint from him. People can't find him. We're talking about utilities. The Honourable Member for St. Lucie has disappeared from the plight of the people in St. Lucie. But let us come back to electricity. We'll go to water another time. And we will engage the Honourable Member coming down there just now. We went to Pike Corner recently. I beg your pardon? Put it in a glass. This is water. No, this is water. I don't drink. Y'all not bring any glass in here for me.
Continue, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. The state has a duty to mediate these conflicting interests, to mediate them. If the citizen believes that the Light and Power has too much power, and if the citizen believes that he is powerless, the duty of the state, and when I say the state, I talk about a human community managed by a government, a cabinet. And that cabinet, that government has a responsibility to protect the citizen, the powerless citizen, in relation to a powerful corporation for whom this legislation has been passed. But don't disguise it in flowery language. I love your language, but I don't love your intent. And if your intent through this legislation is to further the interests of Barbados Light and Power against the powerless people in this country, I do not want any glass. I thank you. The citizen must be billed fairly. And I am going to go to this legislation and try to discover the portion that gives to the citizen the right to be fairly billed, except that at every corner you turn in this legislation, the minister intervenes. On whose behalf, Honourable Member for St. James Central? You're not given to mischief. You're given to the delivery of great speeches. And the great virtue in this speech is that it has disguised the government's intent and the government's contempt for the rights of consumers in this country. And I don't say that to abuse you. I say that with proof. And I will come to the proof. I will get the legislation and prove to you what I'm saying. Now, the Honourable Member described it, as I said, in dramatic language as a theatre of investment opportunity. A theatre. And I also recorded that he said it's a theatre of knowledge as a mechanism for inclusivity. Yes, opportunity. And harness it. Harvest. And he congratulated the last government for taking, and I'm quoting him, taking the foundational step of removing that control out of the hands of a 100-year-old monopoly. His fresh application to George Street would have been accepted after he said that. That he congratulated the last government for the foundational step of removing total control out of the hands of a 100-year-old monopoly. So here he was praising the last government for its intervention. But will the present opposition praise his government for what it started to do last Friday and continues before your honor today? Is his government due the same praise that he reserved for the last government? And we accept the last government, because I wasn't a part of it, as you know, but the last government accepts your praise for the rescue. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true at all. But let us, I lost my glasses. Let us come to the objects and reasons in this bill. Every bill that comes before you, Your Honor, there's a portion, for the sake of the House and the public, that there's a portion that expresses objects and reasons. What is this bill's objective? Why are we passing it? So you will see that every bill states objects and reasons. This 2024 bill says, and I quote, this bill would, A, regulate the generation, storage, transmission, distribution, dispatch, supply, and sale of electricity, and B, promote local participation, competition, and the adoption of energy practices and technologies in the electricity sector that are sustainable to enhance energy security, climate resiliency, and ensure the reliability and affordability of services in the sector. Now, the honourable member hearing that says, there you go. He's on a roll. He has expressed his objects and reasons. And the objects and reasons stated at A deals with the regulation, etc., of the supply of electricity. And B speaks about promoting local participation. The objects and reasons, Your Honor, are not a part of the legislation. When this bill becomes an act of Parliament, when that act of Parliament is proclaimed and becomes the law of Barbados, what is stated here at objects and reasons will not be a part of the law. This is just a statement. This is just a declaration of what they intend to do. Let us go to something called the long title. The long title becomes a part of the law. I can help you, Honourable Member, page 9. I'll help you. I'm here to help you. I'm helping you. Okay. The long title of an act, Your Honour, is that part of the act that discloses the purpose. And that portion of the act can be used as a tool in interpreting the act. In other words, if this legislation goes before the courts and the question as to parliamentary intent, what did Parliament intend? That's what they always ask in the courts. What did Parliament intend to do? And they go to the letter. They won't go to the objects and reasons stated in the bill itself. They can go to the long title. Here is the long title, Your Honor. I've read for you the objects and reasons which will be discarded when this government misrepresents the people of Barbados later today and makes this law. Those objects and reasons will cease to exist. That declaration will cease to have any legal effect. In fact, it has no legal effect now. It is simply a political declaration. But here is the law contained at the long title of the act, which will become a part of the act, a part of the law. The long title says, an act to regulate the generation, storage, transmission, distribution, dispatch, sale. Beg your pardon, I'll read it again. An act to regulate the generation, storage, transmission, distribution, dispatch, supply, and sale of electricity. The promotion of local participation has disappeared. So even the government is impliedly admitting that it doesn't take the issue of local participation seriously. It has disappeared from the long title, which is intended to become the law later tonight, sometime. Is the government misleading the people of Barbados? In those objects and reasons? Is the public entitled to ask this government why it made a declaration under objects and reasons, and when you come to the long title, you exclude, yes, gather, talk, consult, caucus, gather. Help him to read it. Honourable Member for St. James Central, show it to him. He came to see it. He can't believe it. Your Honour, he cannot believe it. He has now converged on the honourable member for St. James Central, and he's trying to bail him out. He is asking the honourable member for St. James Central how he could include the question of local participation in objects and reasons. And when you come to a long title, Christchurch East, converge with him. Ask him what I'm asking him in the presence of the Honourable Deputy Speaker and the people of Barbados. I want them to hear me. Converge. Because you two are shocked. And you two must have whispered in his ear, but how could you make this declaration as to local participation in the energy sector? And when you come to the long title of the act, you exclude it. And that is where the mischief begins. That is, it is that, beg your pardon.
I rise on a point of order, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I wanted to give the honourable member an opportunity. He's misleading the House. I want to give the honourable member the opportunity to have sufficiently long a run-up that he cannot escape from himself. Now, he has said repeatedly that in the objects and reasons, reference is made, which is correct, to the promotion of local participation. He asserts incorrectly that the substance of the legislation abandons local participation. When, in fact, had the honourable member read the legislation, he would see clearly at section 13 of the bill, clause 13, local participation and investment is specifically referred to, and that the minister is empowered, or in fact commanded, to take measures to promote local participation and investment in the sector. The very same thing that he says is not the intention of government is in fact written into the bill. Mm-hmm. A study once again in absurdity.
Okay.
Member?
He is not misleading you. He is not entirely wrong, but I am dwelling presently, and Christchurch East is also appalled. I am dwelling presently on the long title. And I'm saying to you, ma'am, that the long title has excluded mischievously what the declaration said. I'm going to come to 13, section 13. And your point will not be made any stronger, and I'm coming to that within the next 3 minutes. It is there, it exists, section 13. My friend, I have pages on it. I have pages on it. So, a Lady Fairies of Christchurch East, calm him down. Calm him down. Calm him down. Calm him down. I go back to my point that the declaration speaks to generation of electricity and it speaks to local participation, but when we come to the long title, which is a tool of interpretation, which is a statement of statutory intent, it excludes local participation. But my friend draws me to section 13, and I come to section 13 and read for his benefit, and more than his benefit, the benefit of the people of Barbados, who must understand the mischief that this government is pursuing. I have section 13 here, my friend. And to please him, no, I make good notes, you know. One thing about me, I make good notes. And when you spoke about the theater of opportunity, I was so caught by your language. It's not the only thing you wrote that I recorded. You praised the last government. Yes. Humility is made of that stuff. The willingness to learn from others. And you are not without the capacity to teach. But since you draw me to section 13, I come now to section 13. A little what? A little 13. I'm ready for you yet. I am not ready for you yet. So leave me alone. All right. I don't know why you changed seats. Were you ran up there for?
Honourable member, please.
Yes.
Would you conclude?
He heard something and he ran up there and quarreling with the member for St. James Central. Down in his ear is quarreling. And so the honourable member for St. James Central draws us to one section. One section on local participation. It appears in the declaration. It disappears from the long title and reappears at section 13, the unlucky number. You know, ma'am, it appears under a rubric, local participation and investment. You think so, huh? Okay. But you know that will not appear in the act. Does it? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Y'all brought it in here. Tell me. Tell the people of Barbados how y'all tricking them. Tell them. Tell them. All right. Well, if it will be in the act, so be it. Well, look, if it will be in the act, all it says, local participation and investment. Ma'am, there's one section. One section on local participation and investment. The honourable member, now assisted by Christchurch East, is trying to impress the people of Barbados that this legislation focuses on the issue of local participation as an important issue. And yet, only one section all over this legislation, the minister this and the minister that, and the minister has this power, and the minister is a gully born, a gorilla elephant. But when it comes to local participation, one section. How serious is this government about the issue of local participation as contradistinct from the powers that are reserved to the public utility? I cannot be shy about these things. Mine is the voice in defense of the interests of the people of this country against a government that is oppressive. I can smile and say that and mean it no less by my smile. I mean it. I say what I mean and I mean what I say. So he draws us to section 13. Let us read it, ma'am. The minister shall take such measures as may be prescribed by regulations to promote local participation and investment in the electricity market, including the preparation of a local content plan. Sometime later, the honourable member for St. James Central will rise to his feet and the debate will become one of, but the other people, the other government did it, and we do it too, and you are complaining. I am not here to play those games. This is a dynamic sector. This is a dynamic industry. And an industry of 2013, an electricity sector of 2013 is a far different sector from a electricity sector of 2024. And when I say that, yes, you did say the same thing. There are times when I will agree with you. Well, let me develop the point. So that if he says it appeared before, in a dynamic sector, Your Honor, should this government in 2024 not be looking to respond to the dynamism of the sector? In other words, and more specifically, is not the question of local participation a more urgent question today than it was in 2013? Or is the industry static? And I translate that into the everyday business of people. Are not more people in Barbados now interested in reducing their electricity bills by the installation of photovoltaic cells? The answer is yes. Everybody, as they say, trying a thing. Everybody wants to save. It's a dynamic industry. How many photovoltaic cells you saw across this country in 2013? Not many. But in 2024, there are so many. And you spoke of the houses in Lancaster. Not one of them connected. All the Wonder houses, all the cells that they put on top, not one connected. Part of the Hope Housing Project. That y'all came in the Senate chamber and tried to stop the investigation. All of you, they came in there and tried to stop Hope from being investigated by the PAC, the Public Accounts Committee. And come in here, they have the gall to come in here talking about the Hope houses at Lancaster that can't get the cells on the roof connected. But let me not digress. Let me come back to section 13, to which the Honourable Member for St. James Central was drawing your attention. And to say to you, ma'am, that this legislation, section 13, reveals a begrudging acceptance by the government of local participation. All the other issues got many sections and many pages dedicated to the interests of light and power, dedicated to the power search of a government through a minister which misrepresents the interests of the people of this country, the consumers of this country, and dwells largely on promoting the interests of the public utility. Let the people hear that. Let them hear it. Madam Deputy Speaker, let them hear it. That is the adventure on which this government has pursued, a defense of the interests of the big player. And I don't like the word player because this is no game. This is about human suffering.
On a point of order, ma'am, and it is with the greatest reluctance that I rise to interrupt the Honourable Member because he is again misleading the House. And the Honourable Member perhaps may have forgotten, but it was this government in this Parliament, and indeed it was this individual who now speaks, who is the Minister, that would have piloted a resolution in this place for the first time in history after the Honourable Prime Minister would have raised in her budget, I can't remember the year off the top of my head, that there would have to be householders' right to renewable energy in an accelerated access program. And that was part of the initiative of this government to democratize access for all and sundry in Barbados. I do not know how then the Honourable Member can say to this House, as he just did, that we are begrudging in any way the inclusion of ordinary Barbadians when from the most humble up, we created an environment that was supposed to accelerate their participation, ma'am. If the Honourable Member came with a set script, I understand it. But it has to be faithful to the facts. And the people who advise him need to be knowledgeable about the facts.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Vice yourself.
I'm obliged to you, ma'am. I don't think you need a ruling. He's making his wrap-up speech before I finish my speech. Yes, yes. yes.
Conclude.
Have you ruled, ma'am? No, you have not. There's nothing to rule on. He is making his wrap-up speech. I will come back when you're wrapping up.
Clearly. You may continue, sir.
I laugh at the way he looked at me. You. You're my friend.
Honourable Member, will you please continue?
Ma'am, you saw the way he looked at me?
No, sir. I was not looking. I was not looking, sir.
No, I'm not appealing for any light. Section 13 is a begrudging acceptance of the issue of local participation in the electricity sector. It is short. How many lines it is, Honourable Member? 3 lines. And you get up in here boasting about local participation contained in this legislation. You have written no more than 3 lines. And I counted the words, Honourable Member. I counted the words. So unimpressed, alarmed, and appalled that was I at the brevity with which you treated.
On a point of order, ma'am. And again, ma'am, if the honourable member wants this debate to go down this road, then I will have to take him there, join him there. This bill, ma'am, at clause 5, if the honourable member would read, he would see at clause 5 too, clearly stated, and I can count the words for him if he hasn't counted them. I am fairly sure he has not read them, otherwise he would not be allowing himself to deliver of that which he is delivering in this house, ma'am. It says the minister shall require the public utility for the purposes of developing plans referred to in section 1A above to consider A, disaggregation of the public grid into a series of microgrids capable of operating in the island. No, ma'am, you can't have a microgrid unless you are including across geographical spaces all the ordinary people that the honourable members in here trying to create the impression are not taken into consideration by this government in the movement and drafting of this legislation. It is inconsistent, ma'am, with logic. It is inconsistent with common sense. It may be consistent with a set script by somebody who does not understand the energy sector, but who sent him here on a mission. And that is the danger of a fool's errand, ma'am. That is the danger of what is commonly known as a fool's errand. But, ma'am, it was a point of order, not a speech.
Have you ruled, ma'am? Please don't rule.
Kindly continue.
There's no point of order.
Christchurch South.
The honourable member continues to make his wrap-up speech.
I'm not
Will you
accusing
ask
you.
him to let me make my little speech?
Make your speech, sir, but
Why is he so affrighted?
there has been so much reputation in areas that
By him?
reputation is not
By him, ma'am?
elucidation. So I will wish you to continue.
Emphasis, emphasis. I want to hurt him.
Or if you're targeting him, sir, this will not be the place for it, sir. Could you please continue in your presentation, sir?
I want to hurt his feelings
Then
by
my-
telling the people of Barbados that he has brought legislation here, and I repeat, this is the repetition, ma'am, that protects and defends the interests of Barbados Light and Power. That emphasizes the power of a minister. That marginalizes the Fair Trading Commission. And that adversely affects the powerless interests of the consumer. Those are the 4 prongs of the fork that are dug into the chest of this population by this legislation. Don't let them hide behind any pretty words. And I will come to 5 very shortly. Everywhere you lead me, I'm going. But section 13, when he interrupts me, Your Honor, I come in back at him. And I say again that section 13 is a begrudging acceptance of the issue of local participation. 3 lines. And I was about to tell you something that he did not wish you to hear, that it contains 30 words. That is the extent of treatment that local participation gets explicitly in this legislation. 30 pieces of silver. The honourable member for Christchurch East is touching you and telling you to keep quiet. Please obey him. Brevity. But you spoke in here for 3 hours. And Your Honour, how long have I been speaking? He has interrupted me 3 times. It is not a point of order. He hasn't said that I'm misleading anybody. He gets up to say that he doesn't want me to tell the truth. That I am disturbing all his flowery speech. I enjoyed it.
We did not hear that part of it at all.
But I enjoyed his
As far as I
speech.
understand, the honourable member for St. James Central explained
He
what
explained.
is in the legislation.
So he has the
And
right to do that,
I would wish
Your
you
Honour?
to continue, sir, and let us please take out the repetition of the same matter all the time.
I
And let
intend
us
to
move
repeat.
forward in the interest
I'm
of
not disobeying you, ma'am, but
having-
I
No,
intend
you're
to
not.
repeat when
No,
he
you're not.
interrupts me. He
You're
is
not.
interrupting me
But you
because
have
he
to
doesn't
ignore
want
the
the people of
aside
Barbados to
sometimes.
know what he is doing. He doesn't want the people of Barbados to know that Hayes is the voice of Jacob.
Please continue.
I am
honourable member.
obliged to you, ma'am. 30 words, 30 pieces of silver. And you will allow me one more. Expressing a begrudging acceptance of the local population to participate in the energy sector. 30 words. 30 words. Well, he wants me to come to another section, but my theme is clear, and you don't wish me to repeat it. The 4 prongs of that deadly fork against the interests of the people of this country. He went to section 5, but he ought to have gone, if he wanted to make a point in his own feeble defense, he could have gone to section 21, which gives interconnection rights. Now, he will admit to you that interconnection gives rights to other licensees, obviously, to connect with the public utility. And at section, I draw your attention, ma'am, to section 21, subsection 4. I've said that section 21, the rubric will tell you that it deals with interconnection. I invite you to go with me, Your Honor, to section 21, subsection 4, and I read it. The public utility may refuse interconnection services for technical reasons.
To assist the honourable member, ma'am.
Beg your pardon?
Just to assist the honourable member.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
It is a bill, and so therefore it is called a clause.
A clause, okay. That is the most profound statement you've made today. Yes. I'm not being unkind. The short is what? And I needed it?
Honourable member, please ignore the asides.
You're going to send
You
them
have
out,
been
ma'am?
here for quite a while.
You're going to send them
and
out?
you know the banter. However, please continue your presentation, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. He's interrupted me every time he's interrupted me.
Sir, please.
I will. I'll press on. Clause 21, subsection 4. Subclause. The public utility may refuse interconnection services for technical reasons, but shall not impose on another licensee or a registrant for the purpose of interconnection a technical requirement that is A, unnecessary or onerous in the context of the safety, stability, and reliability of the public grid, or B, inconsistent with the license or conditions of registration of the person. What that clause is telling you, Your Honor, is that there is a duty on the part of the public utility to interconnect beyond the moral. It's a legal mandate that they should interconnect, except that they may refuse to interconnect with people who wish to, licensees who wish to sell them electricity. Let us go to subclause. So that's the explanation of that clause. They may refuse to connect with a licensee, a person who has been given the license to generate electricity for sale to the electric company. And that's clause 21, subclause 4. Here is subclause 6 of clause 21. He did not read it this morning, and he's reading it now for the first time. Here's what it says. Where the minister is notified of a dispute regarding a technical requirement for the purpose of interconnection, the minister shall, after A, providing the public utility and the licensee or registrant with an opportunity to make submissions on the matter, and B, consulting with the chief electrical officer and the professional engineer, these are the operative words, determine whether the technical requirement meets the criteria set out in subsection, he says clause, but this says subsection, 4A or 4B. It will become an act and they'll call it subsection. Let's not dwell on trivia. You and I are above that, right? Good. The point is this, Honourable Member, through you, Your Honour. And I say the operative word there is that the minister determines. Here you have a dispute between a licensee and the Light and Power. And who resolves, who determines that dispute, Honourable Member? Through you, Your Honour, a minister. So that when I say this act is about ministerial power and the increase of ministerial power, here is the evidence. You close down the Fair Trading Commission. A minister cannot be a judge in his own cause. That is a breach of the principle of natural justice. Go back to the draftsman and tell him that he has misled you. Go back to the policymaker and tell him that he has misled you. That a minister is overreaching the powers that he ought to have. The minister is involved in the transaction. The minister cannot also be a judge in the cause in which he is involved. That is called a breach of the principle of natural justice, and that is why I say to this minister, the voice of Jacob, shouting above the secret and insidious hand of Esau, that ministerial power is increased by this legislation, and it is so increased that it breaches the principle of natural justice, that a minister who is participant in a transaction involving Light and Power and licensees is given the right to determine a dispute. You ought to close down the Fair Trading Commission. It is a quasi-judicial power that has been given to the minister. The minister under this act has been given the power to determine, to decide on a dispute between Light and Power and a licensee. A minister ought not to have that power. Send back for the member for Christchurch East. I don't care if it was in 2013 or 1913. All I am is a lawyer and a parliamentary representative. And all I try to do is to tell the truth. What do you want me to do?
Honourable Member, please.
What does he want me to do, Your Honour?
Please stick to your...
He wants me to tell lies on the people's time.
That will not be allowed, sir.
And on the people's business. He wants me to mislead you. He wants me to tell you that a minister has not been given judicial, quasi-judicial power in this legislation. Is that what he wants me to tell you? I am duty-bound. I am duty-bound, Your Honour. And I will continue to tell the truth on the people's time and in relation to the people's business. And when I spoke earlier of the four-pronged fork that is digging into the chest of the population of this country, one of those prongs was an increase in ministerial power. And this is an example of the increase of ministerial power. That a minister is participant in a transaction. The transaction involving the licensing, a transaction involving the passage of legislation which secures the position of power of a public utility, and when a dispute arises, a minister by this act, by this bill, which will become an act of parliament, he is allowed, or she, to decide that dispute. The honourable member for St. James Central, he also is a lawyer. And he also understands the principle of natural justice, articulated by some as the rule against bias. 1, 2, 3. The Prime Minister was here and she left. 4. I'm counting the lawyers. And the Attorney General, 5.
And you make 6.
No,
Please.
on that side.
On that side, but you were on that side before, so you,
I was.
Yeah, but please continue.
And now I'm free.
Please continue.
And now I'm free.
You are free, sir. As you should be as a,
So that-
as a citizen of Barbados, you are free.
So
but please let us get back to the discussion.
So that I'm saying to a government that contains several good lawyers, and the honourable member for St. James Central is a good lawyer. Unfortunately for the people of Barbados, he's also a good politician. And that is not always a compliment.
Sir, please. Please get back to your...
But the point is, he knows that he should go back and redraft this legislation and reduce ministerial power. As I have said, this is largely what this legislation is about. Ministerial power and corporate power. And where's the poor consumer? Honourable member, through you, Your Honour. Where's the poor consumer? A clash of powers, corporate and political. And then the minister with political power, assumes quasi-judicial power. I repeat, the principle of natural justice deems him to be a judge in his own cause. In other words, he comes with a bias. And a high court or a court of appeal hearing this matter properly may well agree that this legislation threatens a breach of rights in giving to a minister power when he ought not to have that power. I ask again, what is the role of the Fair Trading Commission in this country? That every time this government comes to this parliament, they did it last year with the Utilities Regulation Bill, which became the amendment. And now they're doing it again in this legislation. They're doing it again in this legislation. They're marginalizing the Fair Trading Commission and increasing ministerial power. This is what this government seems to be about. And were I not here, the people of Barbados would not hear this. So my friend, don't get vexed with me. Don't get vexed with me. You and I are lawyers. And we will meet in the corridor. And we will discuss it truthfully. You know, ma'am.
Sir, are you referring to what is being said, that you will discuss it truthfully?
No, you will discuss it. We will discuss it truthfully. Because the honourable member must know, as a good lawyer, that what I'm saying has merit. He knows that. And that's why I invite him to meet me in the corridor outside or behind there. Behind there is where politicians go and talk the truth. And he knows, ma'am. So don't make a boast about Section 13 when Section 21, subsection 6, brings this government into difficulty with the law. You thought that was enough, ma'am? I'm going to take him to clause 22(2). And the rubric is agreement on purchase of electricity by public utility. Let us read clause 22(1) for context. The public utility shall purchase electricity from another licensee or a registrant at such rate and on such other terms and conditions as may be approved by the commission. So fine. They acknowledge the role, the rightful role of the commission, and the commission here means the Fair Trading Commission. So they have been resurrected at clause 22(1) of the bill, which they're going to make law tonight. But here's subclause 2. They're going to make it law tonight. The people of Barbados will know this. Y'all, the government, I ain't bring this in here. I would never bring this in here. It is wrong. It's morally wrong. It is morally wrong. No, they did not.
They did. They did.
But look, ma'am, please ask both honorable members to stop debating what took place in the Senate. That's not right. They did not.
They did.
They did not. Perhaps the Attorney General now presents himself to tell to y'all the truth. They did not. They critiqued.
Honorable member, are you insinuating that lies are being told in here?
No.
That is a very serious indictment.
No,
This
they're not
honorable
lying.
chamber does not deal with lies.
They are mistaken.
Please.
They're mistaken.
Please continue your
They're
discussion.
mistaken. I commended those good gentlemen for, and I described it, the comparative analyses. One of them dealt with the comparative analysis between 2013 and now. And the other one offered a critique, a penetrating analysis of this bill, with which he disagreed because he said,
I listened.
if you must hear this, that the question of cost to the consumer, same thing I said this afternoon, has not been protected by this bill. That's what they said. They did not, when they were asked to vote. Please do not tell this honorable deputy speaker that they voted in favor of it. That's not true, honorable member for St. Michael Southeast. It is not true. It is not true, honorable
And they
member.
didn't abstain either. And those members, honorable, I listened to you.
I know
Sir,
you
if you
wanted
will
to
take
go
your
there.
seat for a minute, sir.
I know you wanted to go. You love that.
Those honorable members in the Senate, I listened to the debate, and they did not object, nor did they abstain. So please, let us see if we can continue. You've been talking for more than an hour.
Do I
and
have
that's
your protection,
right.
ma'am?
And that is your right. So please let us see.
Do
if
I
we
have
can-
your protection, ma'am?
All honorable members have my protection
Thank you
once
very
I'm here in
much.
this temporary measure.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
And sir, there's so much repetition of the same thing. If we could just get you to that momentum that I
Yes.
know you have, please, so that we can go to the next level.
Your record will disclose that the honorable member for St. James Central spoke for 2.5 hours.
And you have that extension of time you can go beyond, sir. You're allowed that as well.
No, I don't want
But
that
not to
time.
repeat the same thing over and
The
over.
point
again.
I'm
I know
making
you're
is
a very
that
bright
not
lawyer.
even the snores of his colleagues interrupted him. But I listened to him.
There was no need to listen to him as well.
Beg your pardon,
And
ma'am?
I had listened to him as well.
Yes, you and I
Otherwise,
listened for
I would have
all
told
2.5
him about
hours.
repetition if he were doing it.
And
So,
But-
you're on a good path. But please, can we?
yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I
Yes.
know
You're
kind-
very good at that job.
I know you're a kind gentleman.
Yes. Yes.
And a bright one too.
I'm obliged to you.
Yeah.
That is very kind of you. I hope you mean it.
You know me.
So that I was bringing the honorable member for St. James Central to Clause 22(2) of this bill, which they're going to make law tonight. And for context, before he interrupted me, I was saying to you, ma'am, that the public utility has the right to charge the licensee selling them energy on terms and conditions approved by the Commission. Now, I use the term resurrect. Clause 22, subclause 1, resurrects the role of the Fair Trading Commission, which has generally been marginalized by this legislation. But let us consider the subclause that follows. And it reads as follows: where a licensee is an independent power producer, the minister, hear it, ma'am, the minister shall, after consultation with the Commission, establish a time frame for the conclusion of negotiations for an agreement between the public utility and the independent power producer on the purchase, of electricity. Again, Your Honor, here is the minister being given primacy over the Fair Trading Commission. Here's the minister being given powers in relation to rates and terms and conditions that should exist between the utility, the public utility, and a licensee selling power to them. Here, I repeat, is the minister being given primacy over the Fair Trading Commission. So that when I say, Your Honor, that this legislation entrenches the power of the minister, not only is he given quasi-judicial powers in the earlier clause, but here he is being given primacy over the Fair Trading Commission. And that's why I have said that this legislation marginalizes the Fair Trading Commission. At first glance, the public may not be aware of it, because here you have a voluminous piece of legislation supported by a flowery speech, such as my friend is given to. But when you go into the nooks and the crevices of the legislation, the mischief reveals itself. The over-empowerment, the excessive powers being given to a minister. And this government now wishes to impress people that in balancing the interests of the corporation against the interests of the consumer, that they are concerned for the interests of the consumer. They are not. This government is not concerned for the interests of the consumer. It is not. The evidence is here, my friend. The evidence is here, the four-pronged fork. Will you permit repetition, my lady, Your Honor? Or have you heard it enough? And lest you shall forget, the entrenchment of the power of the public utility, the further empowerment of the minister, the marginalization of the Fair Trading Commission, and the disenfranchisement of the consumer. Lest you forget, ma'am, let the public understand that this pretty legislation hides that ugly truth. That the people of this country, when they make this the law tonight, will be no better off tomorrow than they were in 2023 or at any time before. And the point made elsewhere was that the previous legislation was good for that time. But the Honourable Member for St. James Central agrees with me that it is a dynamic industry and that indeed, 2024 is a far cry from 2013. And that in giving a company 25 years of comfort, that this industry is so dynamic and moving so quickly, that a good and just government may well find that it comes back next year. Hopefully it won't be this government.
Might be yours.
To amend
Maybe yours next year.
in keeping with the demands of a dynamic sector. Who knows? Access to storage may become cheaper. Storage itself may become cheaper. Storage may become more efficient. That is how dynamic the thing is. The issues that are burning now were not the same burning issues in 2013. And this point was made before we sat here today. That point was made, and I must defend those who spoke the truth. Last Friday, his Attorney General will tell him that justice must not only be done, but must manifestly and undoubtedly be seen to be done. His Attorney General will tell him that. We would have felt that the Attorney General was well equipped to bring this legislation today. But you, ma'am, in your curiosity, will wonder why the Honourable Member for St. Joseph was not the one appointed to be the voice of Jacob. Did he decline? Did he present with the mood that he presented at that press conference when he went into slumber and rested his weary body? Not a word he said. And not a word he says today. Not a word he says today. They're converging again, ma'am. Can you hear them? They're converging and complaining. I could hear you, you know. You were interrupting me. I could hear every word he was saying, ma'am. Suppose I told you what he was saying. Suppose I told you what the Honourable Member for St. George South just said to the Honourable Member for St. James Central. Suppose I told you. Suppose the people of Barbados heard what the Honourable Member for St. George South just said to the Honourable Member for St. James Central. Suppose the people of Barbados heard, ma'am, and in case you heard.
Honourable Member.
Please tell them to stop it.
Please, will you continue to stick to the matter
I heard you.
before us?
I heard you. I heard everything you said just now.
Honourable Member, please, would you, sir?
I heard you.
Please, before, I don't want to ask you to take your seat while I speak. Please, Honourable Member, could you continue to discuss this matter?
Yes,
and share,
I want him.
And share your concerns and don't mind the asides.
Yes, but you see, when I can hear him, he cursing me now. He cursing me now.
Honourable Member,
He cursing me
I
now.
have not heard him. Will you take your seat for a moment?
Yes, ma'am.
I think you're getting a little hot, and
Yes.
and I want you to be comfortable in your presentation. Honourable Member, please. If there are asides,
Stop interrupting me.
Honourable Member, relax, please. Relax, please. If you need some water,
No,
I'll
I
ask
don't
you.
need
Honourable
anything.
Member.
I just
Please.
need peace and quiet
Just
while I'm speaking.
Yes, please, yes, you will get that. But you know the banter. Please, do not pay attention to the asides. If I had heard what the honourable members on the other side were saying, and I felt it was derogatory or unacceptable,
I didn't describe
I
it.
would have it. I don't want you to either, sir. Please stick to order number 13, and you have done so much repetition. Let us see if we can get to the gist of it And let us see if we can continue this discussion that is so very important,
Yes.
not only to us here in this honorable chamber, but to the rest of the public of Barbados. And sir, I give over to you that you can continue and
Thank you,
conclude
Your Honor.
in the interest of what is
I trust
happening.
that they will now allow me to give this speech in silence.
Again, sir, we know what Parliament is like.
Well, it should not be like
And
that.
we know what happened in our political parties.
There's order.
When there's differences, you don't get everybody to listen, but we are all listening to you attentively, and the records are being made. So please, let us get back to this electric
You've been here long.
debate.
Is it Order 38 that says that a member shall be allowed to give him his speech in silence, his or her speech in silence? That's an order.
But were it not, sir,
that's
now
part of the
you're
standing orders.
reflecting now, sir, on my management here in this honorable chair. And therefore, please continue. I'll give you the latitude, but let us see if we can get to the gist of it and your agreement or your disagreement to this piece of legislation so that we can go forward. There are other honorable members who also have the opportunity or the privilege that they can make their contribution as well. They can rebut, but we're gonna do it as orderly as possible. So you can continue, sir.
Yes. Now, I am on the issue of ministerial power. And I have promised the House that I'm not going to trace this this bill, I beg your pardon, clause by clause. And I will take you and the honorable member to clause 12, subclause 2, letter B of the bill. I'm taking him through it.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, this falls under the rubric terms and conditions of license. Let me read it, ma'am. Didn't want to take too much of your time, but permit me to give context.
It's okay, I'm here to
Thank
do
you,
the
ma'am.
people's business.
A license or licenses with respect to transmission, distribution, sales, and dispatch may be issued to the public utility for such period, being not less than 25 years, upon such terms and conditions as the minister considers appropriate for the purposes of this act. Again, the minister is prominent. And then it goes on, subclause 2, without prejudice to the generality of subsection 1, B, the minister, again, the minister, may include in a license a condition requiring a licensee to comply with such other obligation, whether or not relating to the activities authorized by the license, as appears to the minister to be necessary or expedient for the purposes of this act. And the minister may also provide a condition in the license to cease to have effect at such time and in such circumstances as the minister considers appropriate. Now, if I said earlier, and I did say earlier, that the minister is party, he is fully participant to the transaction of licensing, he is fully participant in the transaction pertaining to the license given to the public utility. Yet, Your Honor, there are points in this bill which they fully intend to make the law tonight, which gives the minister who is contained in the cause, put differently, who is involved in the cause, put differently, who is party to the transaction, he is given quasi-judicial powers. Again, Your Honor, that is my submission, that is my contention, that is my argument, that this act, in several aspects, in giving excessive power to a minister, commits a breach against the principle of natural justice that a man should not be a judge in his own cause. It's the rule against bias. How can you ask a minister who was participant in the transaction to give a decision? And I go as far as to say a judicial decision. And if that is too far, a quasi-judicial decision. But it is fine to speak at length on the act, yet you commit the sin of excluding the injustice that this act commits. I go back to the 4 prongs. Over empowerment of a minister and no defense. No defense, absolutely no defense of the consumer. Where's the consumer? Justice must not only be seen to be done, but it must manifestly and undoubtedly be seen to be done. I repeat, justice must not only be done, but it must manifestly and undoubtedly be seen to be done. That is a dictum that came from a case in 1924. This year, that dictum is 100 years old. And it is as compelling a statement of the law now as it was when Chief Justice Lord Hewart said it in 1923-24. Nothing, there has been no subsequent statement of law that has revoked or abrogated that statement in the law. It remains good law today. And being good law today, it renders this statute, this legislation, this bill, bad law in its content for its breach of the principle of natural justice, and not only natural justice, but the justice that must come to the consumers of this country. All this legislation is doing is disguising the severe disadvantage that is brought to the consumers, the citizens of this country, both corporate and human. And I go as far as to say protects the public utility, but perhaps they're special. And then the honourable member, and I sympathize with him, for St. James Central tells you and tells this House and tells this country that it speaks to monopolies, and he says that it disturbs the monopolistic status of light and power. That is not true, ma'am. This legislation is an acknowledgement of the monopoly status of light and power. And that is why previous governments and a previous government would have passed a law to protect the consumer against the profit motive, against the propensity, the natural propensity of a monopoly. When you are a monopoly, the consumer can be at your mercy, and that's why you need legislation like this. That's why you need the utilities regulation legislation. That's why you need the Fair Trading Commission. That's why you need all of these bodies to protect the consumer against a monopoly. And we were not happy this morning when the honourable member for St. James Central dared to tell this country that this legislation was in some way breaking a monopoly. Breaking a monopoly, he says. I couldn't believe it when he said that. And he explained it by saying that the monopoly is broken by the fact that, I wrote it, yes, here it is. That the monopoly is broken because there's an unevenness in the situation where the utility buys from the licensee. Now, the honourable member, he is in the company of some economists in his government, and they will tell him that the fact that local participants may sell to the public utility is not a break of their monopoly status. That's not true. The status, the monopolistic status, is established in the marketplace of sale. In the marketplace of sale, there is only one entity that...
On a point of order, ma'am, and I ought not to have to do this, but the word that I used was not monopoly. I said it brought the monopsony. The single purchaser.
The what?
Monopsony.
Monopsony.
Monopsony. It is a single purchaser environment. It may be a new thing for you, but it's been around for a long time.
I could have sworn you said monopoly. But I am humble enough that if you say that word, I would accept it. The deputy speaker and I will only accuse you of not being able to pronounce your words
Please
so
do.
that she can understand.
Honourable member, please do not include me in that. Perhaps the honourable member for St. James Central will want to explain that the rest of the public will understand the meaning of the word.
Some word you came
Because
here
sometimes
today.
your words get
Yeah,
muffled.
but you and I heard monopoly.
No, sir, you cannot speak for me. I'm too old a fowl to be fooled by a chicken.
Well, honourable member, through you, ma'am, I apologize to him. I do. I really do.
Honourable.
I really do.
Continue, sir.
Because if he had told you that the presence of licensees selling to Light and Power breaks their monopoly, you probably would not allow him back in here. But since he explains that he pronounced the word badly and he meant to pronounce another word, he forgives me and I forgive him. And we will move on.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. But, Your Honor, please accept my major position that this legislation confuses the relationship between government, the Light and Power, the monopolistic Light and Power, and the Fair Trading Commission. That it is a trend dating back to the amendment of the Utilities Regulation Act, in which the powers properly given to the Fair Trading Commission were lessened in the Utilities Regulation Amendment Act passed within the third quarter of 2023, and it is a trend that continues, unsurprisingly, in this legislation that comes to this chamber some 10 months later. I've spoken, I don't know for how long I've spoken.
Very long. Very long.
But I will wrap up very shortly. But I will not sit unless I bring some information to the goodly minister. One expects to hear from the government that all is well in this country. You expect to hear that. And if the members in this government can raise the courage to try to convince the people of Barbados that this economy is doing well and that this society is thriving, if they say that, you and I will begin to wonder as to the state of their minds. Because nobody believes that. And they cannot believe that. But they're lyrics that need to be sung in your own defense. And I will visit the honorable member for St. James Central, sent today to do a bad job with beautiful language. I will tell him this now, that amidst all of the pretty talk uttered both locally and globally, I'm not going to say by way of assertion. I will be humble enough to ask it, to put it in question form, a mere interrogation, to ask the minister and to ask this government whether Barbados Light and Power has enough generation capacity to meet the potential supply of all those Barbadians who wish access to that grid. I'm not asserting. I am asking this government whether the Barbados Light and Power has enough generation capacity to meet a national desire of access to that grid. The honorable member stood up here today and he boasted about the Lancaster houses with the photovoltaic cells, and all across this country, he said, the grass is being replaced by housing. I invite some conversation now between him and his colleague. He told his house that wherever there was grass, there are now houses. And I find it difficult to control my laughter, because he's correct. That wherever there are houses that this government is attempting to build, there's also grass growing up around those houses. Honorable member, I don't mean to oppress you, nor to expose you. Good. But several of those houses that you have tried to put on the good agricultural land of this country, the grass is beating you. You have built houses in this country, and your colleague introduced this, his colleague introduced this by saying, oh, wherever there was grass, we now have houses. We have a housing trust in this country. We are going to build the most houses ever in the history of this country. Wherever, and the famous phrase, or the infamous phrase that we shall never forget, wherever there was grass, there are now houses. Both statements are true in many parts of Barbados. That wherever this goodly minister has attempted to build those houses of concrete, grass is growing up around them. Unwittingly, his colleague exposed them today. They don't even have roofs. I can take him to the constituency of the honorable member sports. His constituency just down, what's down there called? Eh? So, yeah, I want the area right next to the woods. Right next to the woods. Saw it last night. Went to a lovely concert and I was hoping to see my friend. He was absent. He was working. Good. Please remember that phraseology, Your Honor. Wherever there was grass, there are houses. And those houses will have photovoltaic cells. And the national grid is there waiting. The honorable member for housing has discovered of late that those photovoltaic cells, as are the ones at Kensington, will remain out of use. The grid cannot take them. And the people of Barbados were misled. They were misled on this green enterprise. I was too. I wanted to save. As my grandmother would say, I wanted to save some of the few coppers. But he has gone on this rampage across Barbados, half building houses, and now the grass growing up through them, around them, all around them, all over them. And he is exposed today by his good friend, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who he wished had stayed in Washington so that he wouldn't come home to embarrass him today. He was at the UN, not Washington, New York. He was up there last week. I'll wrap it up. But you need to know this. And the people of Barbados need to know this. From a government that comes in here today and misleads the people of this country into believing that they will now have access to some national grid. Please, Minister, please, government, don't do that. Don't give the people an expectation that is unrealistic. You don't even have them. I don't have them. The Honourable Member for St. George doesn't have them. You're too poor. You? The party, you're poor, man. So that's the point, Your Honour. That unless someone in this chamber has the courage to tell the people of Barbados that they are being misled by a government which tells them, put on some photovoltaic cells and come, let me go down the road. Put them on. Go and tell the people in Lancaster, they connected yet? The few that y'all moved in, the few that get moved in. Anyhow, the bills will show them something. The bills will show them something. They can build them higher and keep pigeons in them. Keep pigeons in them. They have no use. They have no use, Honourable Member, so don't come in here today and tell people, man, get your cells, get your photovoltaic cells. This country is on the move, and Light and Power up there only able to take a certain limited amount of generation capacity. But I ask it as a question. I am no engineer. I am no scientist. I am no expert. Clearly, I'm not. You and I are only lawyers and parliamentarians. And some read a little more. Well, I don't know. I read the English that you wrote, in which you wrote this legislation. But you came in here with Greek today. You came in here with Greek, Honourable Member. Yes, you wrapping up immediately after me, or you got some other people? So that, Your Honour, he is urging me not to expose the government any further. I will accede to his requests, and I will wrap up by asking this government. There's another issue. I'm not going to raise it today. Today is a friendly day. Treat today as a friendly day. But there's something else that I will say in the fullness of time. Let them pass this unjust legislation tonight. Let them visit the people of Barbados tonight with the reality that they have brought legislation in here which pertains not to the furtherance of the interests of the people of this country, which entrenches the interests of Barbados Light and Power, which gives ministers excessive power, which marginalizes the Fair Trading Commission, They are on a trajectory of rendering the Fair Trading Commission a nullity in terms of its legal presence on this landscape. That's what they're doing. That is what they're doing. And between last December and tonight, the Fair Trading Commission, which was established to protect and defend consumers in this country against high pricing, is being marginalized by this government. Amidst all the petty talk, I am very serious. Amidst my friendly disposition today, I want the people of this country to know this. I don't come in here with personal attacks. My protestations, my opposition is based on principle, Honourable Member. And if you and I know privately that this government is not treating the poor people, the middle class people, nor the rich company owners in Barbados well, we are duty bound to say it. You can't say it because you're there. I have the freedom to say it. And not only do I have the freedom to say it, but I am under a constitutional obligation to present constructive opposition to a government as it pursues wrongdoing. And you must go back to your constituents. You must go back to your constituents and indicate to them what is the content and the portent of this legislation. And I urge you to tell them the truth. I urge you to tell them the truth. You may well find that it is a truth. You may well find it is a truth that brings you freedom too. You may well find that. Because if y'all can get together, if this government can get together and convince themselves that this legislation has done something for people in Barbados, something good, they need to start thinking again. And that is why they sent the best speaker among them. When he speaks, they incline their ear to his oratory because it is sweet. The words are sweet, but the reality is bitter. This legislation contains a bitter reality that there is no alleviation of the suffering of people in this country. Bring some legislation that is intended to treat the people of this country fairly. Bring it. Bring it. Your Honor, Madam Deputy Speaker, there is no sight of such legislation, nor near to us, nor on the horizon. As I said, Your Honor, there is something else I intend to say, and I will say it. Not today, but I'm going to say it another time. And it will reinforce in the minds of Barbadians that this government does not have their interests at heart. But I enjoyed your sweet words, the sound, the melody. But, Honourable Member, the rhythm of life has been disturbed by your legislation today. How will you cure it? What will you say in your wrap-up? Will you say that the truth is untrue? I will hear. I will run away. All right. Well, Your Honor, Madam Deputy Speaker, he says that he's going to run us away when he wraps up. Just me. I see. I included the Honourable Deputy Speaker because she represents a constituency of people who are also at the mercy of the light and power. I am worried. Oh, you chaos in Oysters? Come on, rise above that. Rise above that. All right. You and I will talk. Your Honor, I am grateful for the short time that you've extended to me. It has been short because I endured several interruptions, but let the record reflect that this opposition here, let the record clearly reflect that this opposition will not, cannot, and does not intend to vote for this legislation. I do not belong in the other place, but the honorable member, when he tells the truth, will tell you that in the other place there was no vote registered for the legislation. But if they intend to mislead you, ma'am, please do not let them mislead you. I understand that I will close by reminding my friends on the other side that there's a reshuffle coming very shortly. If having had it disclosed by me, it will cause the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health to change their minds. They do it jointly. They get together and decide who will be ministers. If the two of them decide not to do it around the time of their annual conference in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, those who save themselves can thank me for bringing it to public attention, and they will save their jobs. I am always willing to speak for my brothers who are suffering in distress under the threat of dismissal. And if I can say something for them, I will do it. Some of them are actually likable people. Some of them are people that you can like.
Is this still to do with section?
I'm wrapping up.
To do with order number 13, please?
You don't see what I'm doing here, ma'am?
Yes, sir, and I will wish that you will sit and just listen to the rest of the honorable members and give them that respect that they've given you.
Yes.
Yes,
You see, they must learn that when they fire shots, shots can be fired back. They will learn that. And I know they have a patient deputy speaker today that you are capable, you are so charming, you sit down and listen to all of it. And you don't tell him to shut up?
Honorable member, I will not tell anyone
Precisely.
to shut up. But I ask for truth and relevance at times.
Yes. So
And
I hope he will be relevant,
right
even at his asides.
Yes, sir.
Even at his asides, I hope he will be relevant. But for the record, when at some time tonight this thing is about to become bad law, I, as was done elsewhere, will not vote in its favor. Let those be my last words. I'm obliged to you, Your Honor.
Honorable member for St. Philip North.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I stand here at the risk of feeling or sounding quite inadequate after the last 4 hours of speeches. But I want to let the lawyers in the House know that they're no longer the majority. And there are some of us that have a bit to say. I want to bring the conversation a little bit back down to the constituency level, where the members of my constituency, yes, many of them will understand, as the Honourable Leader of the Opposition says, the simple language of the legislation. But at the same time, I want to bring, like you, I'm sure, wish to, Madam Deputy Speaker, the concerns of the constituents of St. Philip North. We are well on the way of, well, we might not meet the 2030 deadlines with respect to all the Sustainable Development Goals, but we've been well on the way for Sustainable Development Goals 17, which seeks to ensure affordable, reliable, and sustainable access to modern energy for everybody. The positives being we are blessed to have almost year-round, if not all year-round, barring some rain, sunlight in Barbados. We have, as a government, gone so far as to increase the loan capacity for the traveling officers who want to purchase hybrid or electrical vehicles, which is a big plus for many of them. We have embarked on the solar street lights, and we were well ahead of that, even back before 2013, the year that was mentioned so often today, where solar water heaters had been installed. I think they were invented here. And we were the forerunners and the leaders in the Caribbean, and I dare say worldwide in terms of solar energy, at least for water heating. And the truth is, and the government has seen to the education of young people by way of photovoltaic education. I really don't know the innards of it, but in terms of installation and so on, these are all good things that we have done thus far. And the excitement in the public is there. There's excitement of reducing our electric bills, and I really can't disagree with the leader of the opposition here. There is a concern, a great concern throughout the entire Barbados of the level of the electric bills, not meaning this bill, but the Barbados Light and Power electric bills. They don't even give you a warning when they're about to cut off the electricity, and I know what I'm talking about. They don't give you a warning every other week, maybe a little less often, because the people of St. Philip North are very proud people, but somebody walks into the office with a huge electric bill, and this electric bill now that we're discussing promises the hope for the constituents of brighter tomorrows. However, and you know, as I was driving here this morning, I admittedly a little late, so I was hurrying. I made it a point to look through my constituency and those of others who my car would have passed through. And there are a few photovoltaic, photovoltaic setups on the roofs, what appear to be mostly middle-class homes. I hadn't seen any on my way here for what we would consider the lower class. So this bill holds promise, and we are seeing, the first thing I heard that caught my attention, as well as many people in my constituency and others, was the thought of not paying such a high electric bill. Not only that, but receiving an income, generating an income from the Barbados Light and Power for having these cells on the roof. You're expected to get a roof, and in X amount of years, you'll be paid back for it. All these things are attracting people. But I want to be honest here. As always, the honourable member said, if he woke up, the member that presented it at 3 o'clock, he may have a different story. That does not apply to this honourable member here. If you wake me up at 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, I have the same conversation with you. But the ordinary Barbadian, in truth and in fact, and the honourable member for St. James Central said that the ordinary Barbadian has access to this. But in my world, the ordinary, for me, is a strange word. But in my world, I want to refer to for those of us who are middle, I would say middle and even lower income, really and truly cannot afford, in a lot of cases, to buy into this PV system. It's very expensive, and I'm sitting back and hoping in years to come it decreases in costs. But it's very expensive. Yes, you can go to the banks, but even though they are prohibitive, in this time in our society, a lot of people are in debt, credit card bills are high, the banks are not offering loans in cases like this. And, you know, at one point, BNOT, National Oil Company, had offered the members of the public servants, I think, the opportunity to purchase the PV systems where you pay back per month. I had applied, but for some reason my application got lost in the mix, and when they found it, the date had gone, and I could not convince those who were in charge to let me be on it, barring that it was not my fault. But that was a good system, because you had proof that you were paying your electric bill every month, whether it be 300, 400, 500, 1,000 in some of our cases. And to me, that should be enough proof for a bank or lending institution to say, okay, he or she is paying for it every month, it means that they will automatically should be able to pay back a loan for the same system. But that is not happening. The banks, despite the so-called ease of doing business, I somehow beg to differ. Up to last week, me and many others in the constituency and in Barbados were battling Royal Bank of Canada, who, because we did not send in updated information, it was a few days late, they actually froze the account. So I had people with small businesses unable to write checks for their employees. It was absolutely disgusting. So the ease of business in terms of getting loans for the ordinary quote-unquote Barbadian is not as easy as we think. I think we should really revisit the Barbados National Oil Company in terms of setting up systems where you don't necessarily need to borrow $65,000, $75,000, but pay back, revisit that to pay back BNOC or whoever the installers are, like you're paying an electric bill, which you do in essence every month. There is concern on my end about the elderly. You know, pensions, the lower limit for early pension has risen, and your salary, your pension basically has been cut. Pensioners do have electric bills, which I would have loved to pay for all, but there's a consideration for elderly people who really too old to get loans of that degree. What's to become of them? I think everybody has the right to be on this system. We're moving towards green energy by 2030. I think is a little of a reach, but we have to try. And we have to include the vulnerable in our society. And that has been a bothersome. Right now, I'm still fighting to figure out, well, not to figure out, I know the reasons for it. For natural gas, Church Village, for instance, has been begging for natural gas forever, but the cost prohibitive factor is still there. And the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, I'm glad that he did not point me out, because my name always is called when it comes to joining some line somewhere. I'm glad he didn't point me out. But he spoke about grid capacity, and that is something I am interested in learning about the value, because obviously Barbados Light and Power is about profit. And if in his wrap-up it can be explained, it might be a little slow, again, to me, in terms of the capacity. If it's a case where the private, you don't mind being off the grid, but I'm wondering, and I'm not sure if this is in the legislation, I have a sense that I heard it in the parliamentary group meeting, about communities actually having their own system where you can pay a minimum cost to whoever is supplying and get electricity. This is something that might be worthwhile to look into. But in essence, these are some of the issues I, as a constituent of my own constituent, and my constituency are concerned about in terms of access. We see there are a few farms in St. Philip North, not many, but they lie with the members of the community that are a little better off. But we all have to play a part in the green energy and trying to get Barbados climate friendly, and the whole work, the Prime Minister works really hard overseas to bring this to the fore. But I think accessibility is a worry. Gone should be, hopefully, the days where constituents come into my office with a few $1,000s of electric bill or water bill would disappear and decrease. So my hope is that we look at that so that it will be all-inclusive in terms of middle class, upper class, lower class, every class. And let this be a part of the initiative. Just 5 minutes of your time, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member, Christchurch.
Thank you.
Christchurch.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Member, Christchurch Central.
Thank you so very much, ma'am. I rise to give a brief contribution into this debate, recognizing that what I heard this morning as the Honourable Member for St. James Central led off the debate was particularly poignant, Madam Deputy Speaker, because he outlined not just the challenges, but certainly the opportunities, some of the opportunities that the right approach to legislation can actually deliver for what is a particularly significant part of the economy. And I listened very carefully to the Honourable Member for Christchurch South in his response, and you know, amnesia, Madam Deputy Speaker, is a hell of a thing, because he lamented about costs of electricity bills to people in this country, and to the extent that the costs are high, he may have the public believe that under a previous administration, that specific actions taken by them till now still reverberate in the energy sector. And I'll just take a moment to enlighten the public through you, Madam Deputy Speaker, as to, in part, how his feigned concern about the energy costs and the high light bills actually emanated, Madam Deputy Speaker, from the intervention of 2010 onward. And now that he has summarily dismissed his opposition, he should be reminded that the record of the party that he seeks to lead is still there. And therefore, when you come into this chamber to accuse the government, this government, Madam Deputy Speaker, of not addressing some of the issues that are impacting people and the payment of their light bills in this country, I think it is a bit disingenuous. But be that as it may, some of us may presume that the public has a short memory. But let me take this opportunity just to highlight a simple matter. We all remember, Madam Deputy Speaker, when the utility was being acquired. And at the time of the acquisition, you would think that an astute Democratic Labour Party opposition at the time would have been interested in the well-being of consumers. And if a Democratic Labour Party government if they were concerned about consumers' light bills for my constituency in Wharton and Lodge Road and Kingston and the other areas across Barbados, then why would the Democratic Labour Party, Madam Deputy Speaker, allow the acquisition, the cost of the acquisition of the Barbados Light and Power to be almost 2.5 times its market value? Because if you acquire something for almost 2.5 times its value, then obviously the return on that so-called investment, Madam Deputy Speaker, and more directly, the electricity rates set to achieve a rate of return on something almost 2.5 times its value, would mean that Bajans, Madam Deputy Speaker, have been paying more for electricity than they should have, because the Democratic Labour Party allowed the acquisition of the public utility for almost 2.5 times its value. And therefore, you can't come in here today saying, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the Barbados Labour Party ain't doing enough to give relief to consumers when the Democratic Labour Party presided over that. So when the Honourable Leader of the Opposition comes in here to ask questions, I hope he understands he can get answers. And he must, through you, Madam Deputy Speaker, appreciate that he comes with a long coattail of mismanagement, bad policy, bad legislation, and which has resulted, Madam Deputy Speaker, in the suffering of Bajans across this country because of that administration, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is nothing to be trifled with, Madam Deputy Speaker, because energy, Madam Deputy Speaker, energy and its supply, there's a almost one-to-one correlation, Madam Deputy Speaker, between how much energy is produced and consumed in a jurisdiction and its economic activity. Almost a one-to-one correspondence. And to the extent that the policy stance and environment that was created by the Democratic Labour Party had led to uncertainty, contributed to uncertainty within the sector. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, they set tariffs without consideration for the fact that as technologies advance, things will get cheaper in the context of being able to produce electricity. And they give no thought as to what that would mean for the consumer. So therefore, whilst we expect, Madam Deputy Speaker, that you make an investment, you will get a return on that investment, certainly as it relates to renewables, never was it contemplated by them, Madam Deputy Speaker, that after you have recouped your capital, the cost of the production of electricity compared to fossil fuels, Madam Deputy Speaker, is chalk and cheese. And therefore, the policy environment within which you're going to set prices should reflect the fact that the change in the cost of the production of electricity, Madam Deputy Speaker, should be then passed on, those savings should then be passed on to the consumer. So I hope that the Honourable Member, when he gets some peace in George Street one of these days, whether in the middle of the night or early in the morning, Madam Deputy Speaker, that he would reflect on how that political party and that administration contributed literally to the suffering of Barbadians today. And therefore, right-sizing this particular segment of our economy, Madam Deputy Speaker, is important. The building of resilience in this country is fundamentally important for how we are able to enfranchise Bajans in this country. And therefore, this is nothing to be trifled with. This is serious business. And therefore, to the extent that this bill is intended to be able to give greater certainty, not just to the utility, but certainty to consumers, certainty to other investors in relation to how we're going to chart this way forward, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is fundamentally important to the future of Barbados. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I promise to be brief in my contribution here this evening, and I just want to, through you, remind the Chamber that the Barbados Labour Party government has been and continues to look to see how, within the context of our fiscal circumstance, Madam Deputy Speaker, to be able to bring relief to Bajans. And we've done so specifically over the course of the last year and a half or so, almost 2 years, Madam Deputy Speaker, by being able to provide up to the first 250 kilowatts, Madam Deputy Speaker, for our residential properties, to have a reduced level of VAT, 7.5% precisely, Madam Deputy Speaker, being applied to that as a mechanism to allow for every household in this country, Madam Deputy Speaker, to be able to see their way through as best we can. Because, as we have had to do in multiple areas to try to contain, to try to give relief, I should say, given the extraordinary rise in costs globally, that this government has committed itself to being able to provide relief to Barbadians. And therefore, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm proud to say to the country through you that the government of Barbados will be extending that relief, which expires today, until March 31st of 2025, as this government's way of bringing further relief, Madam Deputy Speaker, to the people of this country. And therefore, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition should understand that within the context of a fiscal framework that we have had to rescue from the total mismanagement of the Democratic Labour Party, that we continue, where appropriate, to make sure that we right-size the budget to accommodate, Madam Deputy Speaker, to accommodate how we will allow Bajans in this country to be able to face a better day. Now, of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, you would think that the way that the honourable member spoke about light bills, as if somehow light bills just appeared from May of 2018. That's what he may have the public to believe. And therefore, the policy environment within which you implement as a government has a direct impact on costs, and it is something that we have been working with stakeholders to make sure that we can deliver, and it's something, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we will continue to work with. And as you know, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have had some challenges with the global supply chain. So much so, as you know, Madam Deputy Speaker, this government committed itself to, over a 4-year period, to be able to rewire, to bring up to code the electricity systems of all of our public housing estates, Madam Deputy Speaker. And that program started in 2019. We had a little bit of not hiccup, because COVID, sir, you can go out in a body place, really, and things. So there was a little hiatus because of COVID, Madam Deputy Speaker. But as soon as we came out of lockdown in 2021, that program resumed apace. But the program has been successful to date. But because of some global supply issues, it means that the meters that we want to acquire, we've had a little bit of a challenge in relation to that. But we've been working to make sure that we can not just complete the electrical upgrades for the housing estates, meaning not just the pulling of the wires, but the connection to light and power, so that the public safety concerns that those thousands of families across the length and breadth and Barbados were experiencing, to no response from the Democratic Labour Party when they were in office, not one was responded to. But this government found the resources to be able to ensure that thousands of families in this country can see some safety. And we are working with the stakeholders now to ensure that as we complete the remainder of the electrical upgrades, that we're able to bring this particular project, Madam Deputy Speaker, to closure, because we understand that whilst we spoke today in glowing terms about the opportunities around where we see electricity going in the future, the reality is that this government, in focusing on the needs of individuals and individual families and communities in this country, we found the resources, Madam Deputy Speaker, to be able to fix a problem that was neglected under the Democratic Labour Party. And we are working with the stakeholders to make sure we can bring that specific project to conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker. So when he's in George Street talking, whatever he's talking in George Street, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Barbados Labour Party, we have been busy, Madam Deputy Speaker, delivering for the people of this country. And that record, so when they do the, I don't know what they're calling them, when they go checking, you understand? They will see the good work that parliamentary representatives do. Because when we canvass, rub shoulders, we listen to the people, Madam Deputy Speaker, and we formulated policy to respond to the people. And the people of Barbados, when they sense check, recognizing not just what was mission critical, but the things that we said that we will address, we have systematically, Madam Deputy Speaker, one after one after one after one, address these challenges. And as the Prime Minister would say, Madam Deputy Speaker, one cow, so one blow, sorry, this kilo cow. And this government remains committed, Madam Deputy Speaker, committed to be able to solve the issues that confront us And given the challenges that we have had, not just domestically, but certainly more internationally, we are committed, Madam Deputy Speaker, to being able to do that. So the honourable member can leave here tonight knowing that that extended relief will continue for another 6 months. You understand? On the part of the government. And therefore, I hope that he will be able to be man enough or honest enough to admit. You understand? I know sometimes he says some things that will make you wonder whether he has taken temporarily leave of his senses. But I know he's a sensible man. I know he's a sensible man. And he knows, Madam Deputy Speaker, he knows the good work that this government, when he was on the side of this government, he knows
The honourable
the work.
member. The honourable member.
Yes, the honourable member.
Yes.
He knows, and the honourable member knows of the good work that this government has done. He knows. I don't know if he get himself into, Madam Deputy Speaker. He might not even know himself what he got himself into, but he knows the record of this government has been strong, and it's not strong because we say it is strong, Madam Deputy Speaker. We took the time to listen to people. We took the time to formulate the necessary policy interventions. As we were making those policy interventions, Madam Deputy Speaker, we were monitoring and assessing. So when I hope, Madam Deputy Speaker, that good sense will prevail and that the honourable member would not try to bring into this place what we regularly observe when we watch any cable news network coming from another place. Because Bajans are sensible people. And we do not want in this country any misinformation to become fodder that people then start making decisions that really are not in their interest. But I leave that for another time, Madam Deputy Speaker. We're talking about Electricity Supply Act today, and I'll make one further intervention in relation to where we are likely to see the future moving forward. The reality is, Madam Deputy Speaker, every Bajan has the right to determine whether they can buy electricity from the utility or not. And as we move forward with giving people options either to self-generate or to have multiple people generating, the issue will come down to this. If I have the investment to make that I am able to use the grid through license to transmit the electricity that I am producing, Madam Deputy Speaker, to you, and I say to you that I can offer to you electricity at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and you are happy to be able to purchase that from me, then the business of me in relation to the grid is to be able to facilitate the transmission of that to you. Up until now, any individual household, any business who wanted electricity, Madam Deputy Speaker, you only had one option. And as we move forward, we are likely to see the evolution of what will become potentially an energy trading platform network that would allow people to be able to produce. Somebody purchase in those, I heard the Honourable Member for St. James Central refer to it. You can sell your electricity to someone, and that someone then uses that as a pass-through to move into the grid that you, as the consumer, may be able to choose. Now, Barbados is still a small place, and therefore, to the extent that we may see this type of development moving forward, it is possible, and certainly it is possible at a regional level, and therefore, we must understand that with the type of technologies that exist today, and the relative ease with which we can produce electricity, that these types of innovations, notwithstanding not just quality, but certainly to ensure that the issues around the grid stability and those things are are resolved, these things happen now in the United States, they happen across Europe, it happened in Canada, Madam Deputy Speaker, easily. And therefore, the extent to which we can see options for people making investments into these areas, either directly through the actual production of the electricity itself, or through a type of stock market intervention, whereby you are able to invest through mutual funds or some other similar instrument that allows an individual like me or you, Madam Deputy Speaker, to be able to participate. That is the kind of thing that is likely to take place moving forward, because in order to ensure that we get the best possible price for electricity, it means sometimes you have to explore different options for how that electricity is not just generated, but also transmitted through the grid, in order to make sure then that the consumer can actually get a choice, a real choice. And therefore, whilst the grid, and I say the grid in the context of the transmission lines and the like, Madam Deputy Speaker, the maintenance of it, that is going to become an even more valuable asset, more so than the actual generation itself, because if you think of the fact, Madam Deputy Speaker, that whether it is solar, whether it is wind, whether it is biogas and the production of electricity, some of those areas, I've seen instances where, for example, there is prospect of using wave energy as well as potentially part of the mix. There's also natural gas as part of the mix for the production of electricity. The reality of it is, Madam Deputy Speaker, that these different sources of energy production and the cost of being able to do that over time, we anticipate that that energy mix will be able to lower the overall cost and allow us then to be able to give not just better pricing, but better options for pricing to consumers. And I think that the general public, as we roll out these new strategies, that the general public over time, is not going to happen overnight, Madam Deputy Speaker, but over time, the government will be in a position to show how this specific intervention today has made a significant difference to the lives of ordinary Barbadians down the road. And with those few words, Madam Deputy Speaker, I support this bill. I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. George South.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise to support this bill before the House, the electricity supply bill. And Madam Deputy Speaker, it would be remiss of me to sit here as former Minister of Commerce, who had the responsibility for the Fair Trading Commission, and allow the member of the opposition to get away with what I would call in Belgian parlance and in Elton language with murder. Because it may not be a parliamentary word in this lower chamber, but we understand the interpretation when we say it. And the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, he understands that terminology too. But Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, sorry, this bill seeks to replace the Electric Light and Power Act. And Madam Deputy Speaker, the key weaknesses identified in the Electric Light and Power Act is that it has the potential to impede transformation of the energy sector, Madam Deputy Speaker. And, you know, one of the main benefits of this bill, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the ability to more directly regulate the operations of the public utility. And let me say that this is the first time that government has a clear legislative means of directing specific policy interventions into the operations of electricity supply. The first time. And I heard the Honourable Member, and The Fair Trading Commission, and I made it known here, the Fair Trading Commission deals with tariff and economic regulation. Government sets policy. That's the role of government. And Madam Deputy Speaker, there's so much I can get into this afternoon. But I want to stay on point. I want to give my good friend from St. James Central the opportunity to wrap up, because time is against us. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Fair Trading Commission in this bill still holds the responsibility, and I want the public to understand this. The Fair Trading Commission, under this new bill that seeks to replace the Electric Light and Power Act, Fair Trading Commission has responsibility still to deal with tariffs and economic regulation. Government don't set prices. Government's intervention is clearly to deal with creating the enabling environment so that this energy sector can be transformed for the benefit of all stakeholders in the shortest possible time frame. And I want to go to I said I would stay on point, but I still think I should mention this, colleagues and member for Christchurch South. I want you to listen, I want you to listen. There was a report given to your administration in 2012 called the Caribbean Hotel Energy Efficiency Action Program. In 2012, given to the Democratic Labour Party, which was the government then, we came in, member for St. Michael Southeast. We came in 2013, member for Christchurch East. We came in 2013, I sat behind where you were now, right? And we criticized your administration, member for Christchurch South, for failing to action the Shanat report. That's the acronym for it, CHENAC. Some put on a T, some don't. AC for the action, Caribbean Hotel Energy Efficiency Action Plan. And if you check this bill, member for St. James Central articulated the whole role of energy efficiency. So what you failed to do in 2012, from 2008 to 2018, we are now implementing. Because energy efficiency, as an engineer, I can tell you, and I heard a member for St. James Central alluded to it, we can save a lot of money if we focus on energy efficiency, especially in the hotel sector. And this report was given to the last administration. I don't have the report, but we made it a document of the House then, because I was shadowing energy then. And we made it a document in this House, and I'm sure that the clerk of this assembly in this lower chamber can find that report and share with you. So when I sit down and I hear that this government, we have given so much power to ministers, ministerial power, we only deal with policy. We only set policy. We don't set prices, no tariffs. So, member for Christchurch South, let me just leave you with this one other point. Section 35 of the Electric Light and Power Act. Section 35 was never amended. It always existed with the right to revoke and amend licenses. Always existed. And let me turn you now to Section 78 of this bill. Read Section 78. You're the lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a basic engineer. I deal with numbers and I deal with processes. And I deal with equipment. You said you're a lawyer, you're a wordsmith. Check 78. Repeal of the Act 2013 to 21 and transitional provisions, the Electric Light and Power Act. This gives the right to carry on the regime for all licenses right? So, existing licenses which date back to since 1907 can exist as a result of Section 78. And only new licenses can be issued under the section of the new bill. Only new license regime, but further to that, you remember in the year 2015, I made my notes, you know. You need to go back and see who was the first chairman back in 2015 that empowers the minister to either revoke or amend any of the orders in respect to the Barbados Light and Power Company's current franchise. Go back and check and tell me who was the person, who was the first chairman back in 2015. So when you come in here, you represent the Democratic Labour Party, you know. You represent the Democratic Labour Party. You don't represent the current government. You left us. I don't know for a reason. I just heard the member for Christchurch East Central who spoke. I don't want to get into that because I can get into that now. Prices. You're the lawyer. And what you said earlier would mislead the country. What the member for Christchurch South said earlier. This bill seeks to improve the ease of doing business and allow us to get where we want to go with energy transformation in the fastest possible time. We are not dealing with price setting, and I don't want the public to for us to leave this chamber and you send the wrong message to the public that the intervention of the minister is setting prices and dealing with economic regulation. We intervene only to regulate policy and to allow this process, because the energy sector is a key economic sector to provide growth in this country. And if we sit down and we listen to you, we won't do nothing. You're here to criticize, that's your role. But criticize constructively. This is a good piece of legislation. This bill that will give us the flexibility as a government not to interfere with the role of the Fair Trading Commission, which is the economic regulator. You are mixing up the Utility Regulation Act, the right to intervene in a going concern in a business service. You are mixing it up. Madam Deputy Speaker, time is against me, but I just want to say that the legislation that deals with energy efficiency is here before us. The hotel sector is a key sector that will benefit from the amendment to the Electric Light and Power Act for us to focus on energy efficiency. And I would ask us to dust off the Shanat report from 2012 and let us utilize it for the good of the country and focus on some of these things that we can do within the business sector of this country. And that is treat with energy efficiency, because it is critical in our energy transformation. The Electric Light and Power Act had a number of inadequacies and specificities. It left two terms and positions, terms such as supply chief electrical officer, who has a role, cumulative installed capacity. These were some of the things that were not defined. And the roles and responsibilities of the Electric Light and Power Advisory Committee were not clear. Neither were there clarity in relation to the regulatory functions of the Ministry of Energy and Business. I mentioned the Chief Electrical Officer, the Fair Trading Commission. There's no clarity between the roles and responsibilities. Don't mislead the people of this country as you oppose the government's policies. The proposed legislation, Madam Deputy Speaker, will establish an amalgamated regulatory system will define roles and responsibilities for the various regulatory agencies, and that's the strength of this bill. In addition to allowing government the opportunity to intervene from a regulatory perspective in the utility energy sector. Mr. Speaker, I commend and support this electric supply bill, and I want to thank those members on this side who contributed thus far. And with those few words, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable Member for St. James Central.
No, thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, you know, Martin Luther King once said that one of the challenges with the black bourgeoisie is that it uses its position to undermine the interests of black people. And we saw a very glaring example years after Dr. King has passed here in this parliament today. The speech that I gave this morning, ma'am, I spent great time speaking about the national character. And I said that, and I went there because I believe sincerely that this sector is rife with opportunity. I also said, and I also believe, that one of the challenges facing this sector is that unless we educate our people so that they can rise to a level of comfort and that they can feel that comfort resonating in their own discussions, in their own living rooms, sitting down in a bus, ma'am, unless we are able to make our people compatible with all of the technical difficulties that rise, the jargon is difficult. It is about physics, and most people don't understand physics. It is esoteric. It is difficult for the uninitiated to appreciate and understand. And unless we, in leadership, whether in government or out of government, ma'am, make the effort to bring people on board, then we squander yet another opportunity to transform the economic history of this country, which has closed its doors and turned its face against working class people rising and being able to participate meaningfully in new sectors of the economy. And the failure of the black bourgeoisie in Barbados has been that every time we have seen new sectors being created, we feel comfortable that there are for a few to participate in, but that the very many must remain hewers of wood and drawers of water. I have never been there. I reject it out of hand as a philosophical concept, ma'am, and I will not go there. And even as my friend on the other side sits back in his chair and regales himself to the sound of his voice as he presses his phone to his ear, we can hear him listening to himself in his speech, because what he had to say is more important to him than to engage in this debate in a serious and sensible way. It is a form of mental stimulation and masturbation. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, the issue that is before this House now was misrepresented by the Honourable Gentleman, because my own investigation with the clerk at the table suggests to me that there was no dissonance, there was no dissent in the other place. And so therefore, the records of the Parliament of Barbados are that when this legislation went to the Senate last Friday, ma'am, there was no vote against it by anybody. It means, therefore, that those who represent the Democratic Labour Party there vary from those who represents the Democratic Labour Party here. Now, on the last occasion that transpired, ma'am, it called for the head of the senator to roll. It was intolerable. It was intolerable. And on the floor of a party conference, there was a political execution. Now, ma'am, I do not know what fate befalls those who chose to support this sensible piece of legislation, and we will wait and see. But outside of that morass, I want us to look to that which was contemptible in this place. It is contemptible for he who must know better to say that this particular piece of legislation that we are addressing today fails to automatically, and I noted his language, to automatically cause light bills to fall. And he invited me to rise in my place, to align myself with the view that this legislation will cause light bills automatically to fall. Not the words, automatically to fall. No, I am too old a cat to be tricked by a kitten. The reality is, ma'am, or a rat. The reality is, ma'am, the reality is that this legislation is about facilitation. This legislation has nothing to do with any cost of electricity. It is about facilitating the development of renewable energy, which is a technology that will lead ultimately, once we can get to scale, to the fall of prices. As we stand in Barbados today, and this is why I talked about the national character, the way in which we approach debate that should be lifting the tide of understanding, one tide rising all ships, so that all of us in Barbados can comprehend the raft of opportunity. But if people are kept in ignorance, and if they use this place that we should be educating people to pull them down and drown them in a sea of ignorance, because you feel it is a way of striking out against a woman that you obviously hate with every fiber of your being, and you can't get over yourself and your dislike for that one individual, we will get nowhere. We will get nowhere. And ma'am, the reality is that this piece of legislation obviously cannot automatically cause light bills to fall. So the headline, read all about it, read extra, read all about it, light bills will not fall tomorrow. Well, I've given you the headline you want to get. Now, if you can raise your head above that, we can talk a little bit more seriously about the fact that Barbados today has less than 20% renewable energy on its grid. But if we could get it to 90% renewable energy, then the cost of energy, the cost of light to all of our people will in fact fall. But we can't get there unless we pass this legislation, which is supposed to remove the blockages or the obstacles that are there. And that is what we did not hear from the Democratic Labour Party in this place. But interestingly enough, as I am as I'm advised and reliably, I believe, I have every cause, reason, and justification to believe that those who advise me are saying that which is true. That in the other place, those senators were able to point to strengths, they may point to weaknesses, but they had no disagreement because this makes sense. And why does it make sense, ma'am? You know, I sat down in my place and I listened. The FTC has been denuded of its strength and its potency and marginalized. No, ma'am, gobbledygook. Prior to this bill, the FTC did not have any role to play in anything called energy storage in Barbados because the legislative environment did not allow for there to be any energy storage. But we have established in this parliament today that energy storage is an indispensable part of that which we must do in the renewable energy journey, and that you cannot, in fact, have a successful generation of renewable energy effort without complementing it with storage of that which you have generated. And that therefore, there must be a role for storage and an expanded role for an FTC in regulating tariffs and setting tariffs for energy storage. So far from denuding the FTC, we have expanded its arc of responsibility. What madness were we treated to today? And then, ma'am, as though that were not bad enough, this bill takes us into the 21st century. Whereas you heard the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central so eruditely expatiate on the question of microgrids, and then your ability as ordinary people to start to trade in a domestic energy market. Things that are unprecedented. But this legislation is opening the door to that. And who is going to regulate this economic activity? This new area of economic activity that ordinary Barbadians that live in Redmond Village and in Hoyts Village and in Fitz Village in my constituency would otherwise be alienated from, but now could have if they're so interested. And if you're not interested, that is fine too. But if you're interested, that you can get into a space where you can find a way of making money and also freeing yourself with the microgrids from a reliance on the public utility. But good Lord, ma'am. But this language has never been spoken in the Parliament of Barbados before. And to regulate that, it means that you have to have an expanded responsibility of the FTC. But the person charged with responsibility for standing at first lip and awaiting a change of mood of the country would have the country believe that those things are irrelevant and that in fact the FTC is being hampered and stymied when the legislation itself makes it abundantly clear that the FTC is in fact being enhanced in terms of its importance and in terms of its role. And you can heckle me as much as you like. Away with you, slight man. The FTC is not, was not, and cannot be involved in issuing licenses. Another fatal flaw in that which we heard today. What gobbledygook? Where does that come from? Everybody with a little bit of understanding on this matter, I don't care how minuscule the understanding is, must know that the FTC don't issue nobody in the licenses. Licenses are issued by the government, the Ministry of Energy. The FTC don't issue nobody in the licenses. And so therefore, ma'am, when you are speaking about the power of the FTC, you're talking about economic regulation. I just heard the Honourable Member for St. George South say so. You're talking about tariff setting. Let us break it down. You're talking about the standards of service that are being offered to the public. Nothing in that is being changed. Nothing in that regime is being weakened. In fact, the arc of responsibility has been widened. And the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, again, this practice of making things overly mysterious, appear to be overly complex, because you want to make the ordinary person believe that there is some mischief somewhere, that you want to be able, through disinformation and through misinformation, to misguide people. I could not put it better than the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central put it, that, you would listen to the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, and then you would act in your own disinterest. Because left to him, you should not be invested in RE at all. He says it's a failure. It's a failure. Well, it's working all around the world, but black people in Barbados shouldn't get involved. And you come straight back and ask yourself, why, if it is a failure, does the most honorable, you didn't give me permission to call the boy name, but some of the multi-millionaires in Barbados are spending every Sunday morning driving around Barbados to acquire more opportunity to invest in RE. Why? And who is their agent? Because it can't be that if I am here arguing for the ordinary man to get a piece of the pie, and he who leads the Democratic Labour Party is telling the ordinary man, don't bother with that. Don't bother with that. It's a failure. And now, ma'am, he goes to the housing effort of the government, because there's no, and that what cut deep. That cut me deep to the point where it hit bone. Because, man, there is no government to be found in the Eastern Caribbean. Not one that has gone so far as to incorporate the ordinary persons in their country in the renewable energy journey. And I cry shame on you, not one. And the fact of the matter is, ma'am, the fact of the matter is that he will say that they want the houses in Lancaster, in my constituency, because you touch them, you touch me. You want to say the houses in Lancaster are not connected to the grid. So what? If the house has on PV, I can self-generate, man. And through self-generation, I can bring down the cost of my power. I don't have to sell it to anybody. I don't have to store it because you're using it home at me. You don't understand it. You're not reading. And you get a bad brief. And you come in here and slavishly repeat every nonsense and mumbo jumbo that somebody shove at you with a long spoon, and you're disgracing yourself in the process. No, ma'am, it goes further. It goes further. He talks, ma'am, about the failure. He talks, ma'am. You can holler at me as much as you like. I am on my feet now. And when I'm on my feet, I will speak how I choose. No, ma'am. The system, the legislation that he obviously did not understand says, and I tried to guide him, I took him to clause 5. The minister shall direct the planning, development, and monitoring of the electricity system, and for that purpose shall require. This is the minister that he get in here and say that it's too much power for the minister. Well, this is what the minister is entitled to do. I want the country to understand what the minister is empowered to do, that the leader of the Democratic Labour Party don't want the minister to do. The minister is entitled to require the public utility to develop integrated resources and resilience, to require the public utility to develop grid modernization plans, to require the public utility to consult with the commission, the chief electrical officer, and the system operator, and other stakeholders. Now, ma'am, in the previous legislation, it was a free-for-all, where no requirement was made of the public utility to do anything. So what the minister that he quarreling about now is doing is bringing a set of standards to bear on how the utility operates in Barbados. But at the same time, we are being told, well, this legislation is to let the utility do what it wants. When the legislation itself makes it abundantly clear to all but he who is consumed with listening to his own voice, that there is a change, there's a change in the game plan. And it don't done there. At the second, I know it is an excellent point. And the second part of it, the minister shall require the public utility for the purposes of developing plans for subsection 1A to do the following. Do the following. Disaggregate the public grid into a series of microgrids capable of operating across the island, so that for the first time in the history of Barbados, the minister can tell the utility, come in my office, man. The people out here need to be able to break down what they generate into groups geographically, and that they can sell to one another, and you have no control over the purchasing anymore. And that is where I use the word monopsony, M-O-N-O, mono. He didn't understand it. The monopsony is a market in which there's one buyer. And this legislation is saying, to hell with that. One buyer can't run Barbados. Everybody must be given a chance if they want to be involved in the buying. I tell you that I don't trouble you, but I want you to read. I know you can. It goes further. The development and deployment of smart grid infrastructure can be required by the minister. No, smart grid infrastructure is what's carrying us into the future. And if you have it, you look at the utility today, look at the grids, look at the grid, look at the poles that when I was a little boy, then were the poles there and they are still there. Huh? If you travel overseas and you see the high tension cables and so on that they're using, well, you see anything that look like that in Barbados? Madam Deputy Speaker, that is what is now capable. The minister, for the first time in the history of this country, is capable of calling in the utility and saying, look, we got to talk about how you can make this grid, more resilient. And while he was interested to heckle me, I going where we never went before. That the minister is entitled now to call in the utility and call for underground placement of electric lines. So that whenever they got a hurricane come through and everybody lost the power, that foolishness can come to an end and we now start to place the cables underground. This is not for the first time that Barbados been hearing that. We have needed that for a long time. And the ordinary people have been asking why it is that I can see underground cable. I can't see cables when I go to certain places, because everything underground. Why it don't happen in Barbados? Well, you know why? Because nobody could compel the utility. And this honourable member now turns his face against working class people getting resilience in the electric sector. This honourable member. This is the New Look Democratic Labour Party. They say we turn the face against the people in Oyster's getting an upgrade. Huh? And the deployment of utility storage facilities at diverse points along the transmission and distribution system is also now able to be required by the minister. So while the Dems, or this Dem, because the others in the Senate got saints, well, this then decides that he ain't want nothing to do with these developments. These developments, I want to respectfully submit, ma'am, are at the core of a future resilient grid in Barbados and a resilient economy. If you feel that this is asking too much of a minister, and that if you had your way, none of these things could be required of the utility, then you and the utility suit, because the utility don't do nothing along these lines here anyhow. But we feel that the utility must be moved in a direction of progress, and that the people of Barbados must not be stymied in the journey of progress. And as long as we are in government, with our hands on the reins and direction of government, we shall ensure that there is progress against all odds and all opposition. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I wanted to speak now with respect to the Honourable Member Philip West raised some important questions. North and vehicles. I wanted to say, ma'am, that the question of involvement of the ordinary Barbadian. There are many vehicles to this. The Barbados Workers' Union, for example, is to be commended. The Barbados Workers' Union, ma'am, joined with the private sector in order to make an investment in as much as 10 megawatts of solar photovoltaic at Mangrove. This is one of the largest investments contemplated in this country thus far. And it stands out, and it answers the question that the Honourable Member for St. Philip North raised appropriately. How can we get more people, ordinary people, to be onboarded? Now, if the workers' union says we represent how many ever 1,000 people they represent, and they invest in this, then, ma'am, and they're able to sell that back into a grid, then, ma'am, they are able to have a return that can be shared with their membership. It is something that all similarly structured organizations should be considering doing. In fact, there are churches, the Anglican Church is one, that is also doing similar things. Not only to run the church, but the building, but, ma'am, to make sure that the community that you serve is be able to participate. The Honourable Member also, ma'am, raised the question of ease of access administratively. I have had to remind the goodly gentleman who sits across from us, that while he was with us, in fact, but clearly paying no attention, that we came here with a homeowner's right to renewable energy. He may not like the terminology, but what it does do is to allow anybody who wants 5 kilowatts, 2 kilowatts on the rooftop, 10 kilowatts, to be able to be treated this way. You don't have to wait on a license. All you have to do is go to the Ministry of Energy and register. You tell the gentleman over there in blue, I am interested in registering my installation. And there you go. So that when before, under the lady who he put in the Senate, when before there was a waiting list, how long was the waiting list? months long, 6 months. People were waiting 6 months, and some, you tell me years, even worse. People were waiting, I know, about 6 and 8 months to get a license in Barbados. An ordinary homeowner. We are saying no. For 5 kilowatts, no, because it can't do no damage to the grid. It is too minimal. All we need to know is that it is there. And then we can have the necessary audits done from time to time to make sure that in good condition, being maintained, etc. And properly, if you're connecting it to the grid, properly connected. And if you're not connecting it to the grid, but then it got to be part of the insurance policy and so on and so forth. And you self-generate. You can have it home at you and self-generate. You don't have to sell it into the grid. You just run your house. And you know, ma'am, we have a conversation for a whole day. And a whole leader of the opposition ain't collide with the fact that, you know what the next technology that is already on our doorstep is? That the motor car that you're driving, plug in, and you are charging the car off the house, and the excess energy going back into operating the house. Well, that's what's happening. And you can't have a country seriously being run if there's a bankruptcy of understanding or a bankruptcy of interest on the part of the opposition. I mean, we don't need it, but we can benefit from it because the national character of debate that I started with is aimed at ensuring that we have 1,000 thoughts and 1,000 voices. But if you are all about hearing yourself, and then you sit down and you listen to yourself, even when the parliament going on, and you further stimulate yourself by laughing and playing it over again, then this is really not about anything serious as it impacts the politics of the country and the developmental paradigm. This is about self. And when a man's ego becomes bigger than the man, he ceases to be a man and becomes an ego. Now, ma'am, it goes further. The Honourable Member for St. Philip North asked about loans, and it was a very important question that she raised. And I want to say, ma'am, that this is one of the reasons why this legislation is so critical as well. Because there are a number of people out there who are interested. And yes, it is a heavy ask. In many cases, you've got to take out a loan for a house. Maybe you might be looking at $15,000, $20,000 in some cases, depending on the size of the house, a little bit more. And a number of banks have their own structures so that you can get different levels of interest being applied and so on. The credit union has been very competitive in this regard, and I'm not going to sell anybody's financial institution here. But the truth is, ma'am, as we have said broadly, there's now about $1 billion dedicated to this, but it can't move until when we get to the point of storage in the financial institutions. And therefore, the financial institutions have indicated to the government of Barbados that they have $1 billion tied up. And one of the issues that they have in unlocking this money is the absence of storage in this island. Again, ma'am, you cannot be heard to say that the Barbados Light and Power is being propped up by this government, because what this legislation is about, first of all, creating the legislative and administrative framework for storage that did not exist when the Democratic Labour Party created their piece of legislation. And secondly, and more importantly, that we now can compel the utility to come to the table. And this is not a new thing. We have stood in this parliament and heard the Prime Minister lament the fact that for now maybe 2 years, she has been engaging in conversation with the Light and Power about the need for us to move at scale. And because the whole world as one is trying to move towards renewable energy, the whole world is trying to source battery storage. The whole world. And unless we buy at large scale, then the price of being able to access it is going to be too high and above and beyond our reach. And our people will suffer, our investments will fail, and our country becomes more uncompetitive. That is the posture of the Democratic Labour Party. We, on the other hand, say, and we say it without reservation or apology to anybody, we need to purchase more storage at scale. That means a lot of energy storage to be deployed in the language of this legislation, deployed at facilities at diverse points along the transmission and distribution system of the country. I just quoted the legislation. And if the legislation is telling you that that is its ambition, and the only way we can get it at scale is if the government don't buy energy storage. The utility will have to do that. So therefore, the only way that we can get it is by applying the pressure to the utility. The same utility that the honourable member will have you believe we have no interest in applying any pressure to, and that we only come in here to pass a piece of legislation to prop up. No, Madam Deputy Speaker, I don't want to go on and on. I think I have made the position abundantly clear. We have been treated to a nonsense, a whimsical, fanciful tissue of nonsense. And at this point, ma'am, the Parliament has done no service whatsoever by the Democratic Labour Party in this place. I commend the others in the other place for their maturity. And I hope that one day they will be able to sort out themselves in terms of their obvious internal and ongoing difficulties. I'm obliged to the House. I'd like to move that this bill be read a second time.
Honourable members, the question is that this bill be read the second time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that Your Honour do now leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do now leave the chair and allow this honourable chamber to sit in committee. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This chamber is now in committee.
Which order is supposed to go? 13?
You here, cause you don't be here, no sleeping. You don't be here, so you don't trouble me. You don't trouble me. You enough to catch a drive. Enough to check the drive. This honourable house is now in committee.
Mr. Chairman, permission to call the bill in parts and clauses.
Permission so granted.
Part 1, clauses 1 through 4.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 1, clauses 1 through 4 stand par.
The question is that part 1, clauses 1 through 4 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 2, clauses 5 through 8.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 2, clauses 5 through 8 stand part.
The question is that Part 2, clauses 5 through 8 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 3, clauses 9 through 20.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 3, clauses 9 through 20 stand part.
The question is that Part 3, clauses 9 through 20 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 4, clauses 21 through 23.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 4, clauses 21 through 23 stand part.
The question is that Part 4, clauses 21 through 23 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 5, clauses 24 through 34.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 5, clauses 24 through 34 stand par.
The question is that Part 5, clauses 24 through 34 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 6, clauses 35 through 48.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 6, clauses 35 through 48 stand par.
The question is that Part 6, clauses 35 through 48 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 7, clauses 49 through 51.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 7, clauses 49 through 51 stand part.
The question is that Part 7, clauses 49 to 51 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 8, clauses 52 through 54.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 8, clauses 52 through 54 stand part.
Wait a second.
The question is that Part 8, clauses 52 to 54 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 9, clauses 55 and 56.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 9, clauses 55 through 56 stand part.
The question is that Part 9, clauses 55 through 56 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 10, clauses 57 through 62.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 10, clauses 57 through 62 stand part.
The question is that Part 10, clauses 57 through 62 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 11, clauses 63 through 65.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 11, clauses 63 through 65 stand part.
The question is that Part 11, clauses 63 through 65 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 12, clause 66.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 12, clause 66 stands part.
The question is that Part 12, clause 66 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 13, clauses 67 through 79.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 13, clauses 67 through 79 stand part.
The question is that Part 9, clauses 67 to Part 13, Part 13, clauses 67 to 79 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
First schedule.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that the first schedule be the schedule to the bill. Sir,
The question is that the first schedule be the schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, be the all
first-
honorable members in favor, please say aye. Honorable members against, please say no.
yeah, I got it.
Second schedule.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill.
The question is that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye. All honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Third schedule.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill.
The question is that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that the fourth schedule be the fourth schedule to the bill.
The question is that the fourth schedule be the fourth schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that you now report progress to, report the passage of this bill to Her Honor the Deputy Speaker.
The question is that they do not report the passing of one bill
In committee.
in committee to Her Honor the Deputy Speaker. All honorable members in favor, say aye. All honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Honorable members, the chairman of committees has reported to me the passing of one bill in committee.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the Electricity Supply Act 2024.
The question is that this bill be now passed and be so cited. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With that, we have come to the end of today's sitting, and I therefore beg to move the adjournment of the House until next Tuesday, the 8th of October at 10 a.m.
Honorable members, honorable members, the question is that this honorable chamber concludes today's proceedings and should reconvene on the Tuesday, the 8th of October at 10 a.m. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Yes. This sitting now stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 8th of October, 2024 at 10 a.m. in the morning.